In a world marked by uncertainty and volatility, space is our common ground. As our needs down on Earth evolve, space follows suit. The way we use space evolves to help us. Protect our citizens. Make our cities resilient against climate change. Create job opportunities and maintain talent in Europe. Dear guests, welcome to the EU Space Days 2024.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Can you all hear me okay? I can hear me okay, so that's a good sign. Thank you all for coming, ladies, gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends, colleagues. Thank you all for coming very much. Welcome to this pivotal gathering hosted by the European Commission's Directorate General for Defence, Industry and Space. It's a great honor to be in the beautiful city of Budapest under the auspices of the Hungarian Presidency, of course. Now, holding this event in this University of Technology and Economics is obviously very fitting. Today you will hear about technological breakthroughs and innovative entrepreneurship. You'll also hear about investing in skills and people. All of those priorities embodied by our hosts here today. This comes as a critical juncture for Europe and its ambitions in space. We are at the intersection of rapid technological evolution, heightened geopolitical tension, and a growing recognition of space as a vital domain for our security, our prosperity, and our sustainability. Today's discussion will reflect these opportunities and, of course, some challenges as well. And we will chart a path forward for Europe's leadership in space. I've already mentioned our gracious hosts here today, but it's only fitting that we thank them again for their part in the important work that they take part in, that higher education institutions take part across Europe as well. Today's conference is, of course, a forum for discussion among all of you, but not just that. It is seen as a call to action. Space is no longer just a scientific frontier. It's a domain that touches, as you all know, I'm sure, every aspect of our lives, from how we work, how we travel, how we communicate, how we respond to crises, and how we ensure our collective future. As we convene here in Budapest, I hope we can remember that the advancements we discuss and the decisions we make here have the potential to transform not only Europe, but also the world. Together, as policymakers, industry leaders, scientists, innovators, you all have the tools, the knowledge, and the collective ambition to shape the future of space for better. With that, enough from me. I hope you will all help me welcome our hosts, and I will invite the rector of our university, Hassan Sharaf, to say a few words. Rector. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all at Budapest University of Technology and Economics. This university has 243 years of history and one of the oldest engineering institutes in Europe. We have 8 faculties and 71 departments. The good news, the 3 faculties are involved in space research and teaching. Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Informatics, Faculty of Mechanics, and Faculty of Civil Engineering. We are proud that the first CubeSat was developed and launched from this university in 2012. And after that, we started, let's say, the manufacturing of picosatellites with 5-centimeter cube, and we are still working on that. Our colleagues and students are working together to develop these picosatellites. Typically, the focus of this university is engineering. We don't work for the shelf. We work for industry. We work for success. And that's why our strong point that we have a very strong partner network around us here in Hungary in different fields, and in the space we can say we are unique on that. In year 2022, we started a master program in space engineering, and just 2 months ago, we had the graduation ceremony of the first 25 engineers in space. The good news from the other aspect, that the industry is waiting for these engineers. That's why they attract them before graduating. So we don't talk about job problem here. Before graduation, they have jobs, and I'm happy that we are part of the Hungarian ecosystem, and the space can be one of the focuses we have in the near future. Of course, the collaboration between universities somehow is always different, but here in this country, we started a second program together with 21 universities. The name of the program is called UniSpace. This program is developed in 4 domains and running in English, which is, and thanks for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and especially for Mrs. Orsolya Ferenc, who supported this activity, and he pushed this activity to have this consortium together. So I'm happy that we are part of the Hungarian space ecosystem, and many thanks to the Ministry of National Economy for choosing us as strategic partner, and of course to host this event. It's my job to try to reduce the delay. Sorry to be short, but after these words, I should leave. And again, I hope you fruitful conference, consultation, and tomorrow my colleagues in panel discussions will introduce our teaching activities. Thank you.
So I'd now like to invite our hosts in a slightly broader sense to come speak to us. We're very lucky to have the Deputy State Secretary for Technology at the Ministry of Economic Development, Szabadh Szaunoki, who's now going to say a few words. Minister.
Distinguished guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's my honor to be here, and it's my great honor to welcome all of you on behalf of the Ministry for National Economy. Our ministry is a very pro-industry and pro-competitiveness ministry, and what is the key of competitiveness if not space and space industry? We are basically focusing on all fields of the technological domains, from AI to blockchain to drones, and within space, our main focus is on the utilization of the different inventions and technologies, and we are doing our best to make the Hungarian companies visible on the international landscape. In the recent years, the ecosystem went through great development, and the contribution of the Hungarian government to ESA and different funding programs was increased significantly, and that's the path what we would like to follow and to continue. SMEs within this space are also very important for us, and we are working with the supplier focus. And on the other hand, we are working on supporting the development of national champions and launching flagship projects which can be beneficial for the whole ecosystem, for the scientists, for the SMEs, and also for the graduates. We are very proud to be here at this university, the very heart of engineering and space industry, and we're also very happy that we have both pillars now available in Hungary, space policy also. So with this combination, we are covering what we need these management fields. And it's also very important for us to raise the attention of those companies to space industry who are not suppliers, who are not members of this community. Luckily, we have very many companies with great capabilities and engineering skills, and hopefully many of them are here today or following us online, not only from Hungary, but from across the European Union. Thank you very much for being here and for accepting our invitation. I wish you fruitful meetings, and I wish you enjoy Budapest, and thank you again for accepting the invitation of the Commission and of us as the co-organizers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for those words. For the Commission perspective, I'd like to invite Guillaume de Labrosse to join us. He is a head of unit for space policy at the European Commission. Guillaume.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy and pleased to be with you today. Indeed, as mentioned by Deputy Minister of State, in the heart of space and engineering in Budapest, that's a great pleasure, a great honor to be with you. I'm very happy to open the EU Space Days that we are organizing together with the Hungarian Presidency. As mentioned by Alex, the European space policy is really at a critical juncture. We are on one side, we are facing two big challenges. One is related to security, resilience. We have indeed more and more security threats that are pressing space. Space is no longer immune to space threats, and that's something that we need to fix in the upcoming years. At the same time, what we have as second big challenge is the erosion of the competitiveness of the space sector. We see large corporates that are suffering from pressure coming from outside Europe, be it in telecom industry, the rocket industry, and soon in the Earth observation industry. We have at the same time lots of scale-ups and startups in Europe that are flourishing, which is excellent news, but sometimes they do struggle to find growth capital in Europe, and they have to go to non-EU investors to run commercialization and industrialization activities. So we face two big challenges in the upcoming years. One is security related, and the other one is related to the competitiveness of the space industry. Good thing is that we have a new commission, and for the first time ever, we're going to have a commissioner dedicated to space and defense. And that's excellent news. This is the first time ever that happens. And that means that the commission is really uplifting its role on space and defense in the upcoming years. So Commissioner Kubilius will be, as of the 1st of December, the new fully fledged commissioner for space and defense. And he was given by the President von der Leyen a clear roadmap, a clear mission letter to structure his mandate, including on space. Of course, we're going to have two big drivers here. One will be resilience, and we have the report of President Niinisto setting the scene on the needs for Europe to be ready for scenarios that can be extremely complex for Europe to handle with. And space will be one of the assets that we need to further develop to be ready for the most extreme military contingencies. The second big driver will be competitiveness, and here we have the report of Professor Draghi that set the scene, and that is quite alarming on the state of the competitiveness of the Europe economy and on space in particular. So those would be the two big drivers: resilience on one side, readiness, and competitiveness. The Commission will have clear priorities in the upcoming years. Those priorities were set in the mission letter given to Commissioner Kubilius. And priority number one will be about the EU space flagship, of course. We have Galileo, Copernicus, and soon we're going to have IRIS2. we will have to prepare the next evolution of those EU space flagships to ensure that they remain world-class assets. And that requires, again, investing in making them more performant, making them more robust, and that's something that will be quite high on the agenda of the Commission. Priority number 2 is very simple. In the upcoming 10 years, we're going to have more than 350 satellites to deploy to cover the European needs, Galileo, Copernicus, IRIS2, and other satellites. So more than 350 satellites to deploy. That means that we need to have a secure access to space. So we need really to regain our sovereignty in access to space to be sure that we can launch those satellites in the upcoming years. And here the Commission is ready to uplift its role in access to space in close cooperation with the European Space Agency. For us, it's very clear that we need more competition, we need more diversification, and we are ready again to play a role in terms of aggregation of the institutional demands, so playing a role of market share, if you want, between the supply and the demand sides. Research innovation to push our industry to be very disruptive and potentially capture the market in 20, 30 years. And the third element is addressing one of the bottlenecks that we have in Europe, which is access to ground infrastructures. So to testing facilities, sometimes very costly, not affordable, not available, and the launch pads, which will be an issue if we have more and more new rocket providers. The third priority is about the industry. So again, what can we do to make our industry more competitive? How can we, for instance, to support the development of new space actors, how can we develop fast and agile procurement to give more access to public contracts to those new actors that need such contracts to grow fast? How can we make our industry more resilient? How can we reduce dependencies for certain technologies? How can we diversify access to raw materials? All that, we need to think in terms of what can be done to make our industry more competitive and more resilient. And we need to think collectively about putting together measures, a strategy about the health and competitiveness of the space industry. That's key. We need the industry. If we don't have the industry, we have no basis to develop our assets tomorrow. So that's clear that the industry for us is a key given in this equation. Priority number 4 is about the EU space law, about the need to defragment the regulatory framework across Europe. Today you have 12 member states having national space laws. It means 12 different sets of rules that industry has to comply with. It means admin burden and very complex way of handling business. What we want to do with the EU space law is one single set of rules that would apply across the EU 27. And in doing that, we would create a vast and common single market for space, which is good for the space business. That's exactly what we want to achieve through the EU space law. And we want to push this EU space law to be on the table of the co-legislators, so member states and the parliament, as soon as possible in 2025. Priority number 5 is around space and defense. As mentioned, space has to play its role when it comes to ensuring the security of Europe. So we need to reinforce space capabilities for defense, be it in terms of intelligence, positioning, navigation, or secure telecommunications. And here we need, of course, to leverage as much as we can our flagships, Galileo, Copernicus, IRIS2, but we may need as well to kind of move for a more service-driven approach and buy services from certain trusted operators, trusted industry. At the same time, we need as well to take measures to protect our industry, to protect our space systems, because the more those assets gain value, especially when it comes to supporting defense operation, the more likely they are to be targeted by hostile activities from certain states. So we need as well to better protect and enhance the resilience of our space assets. So that's going to be very high on the agenda of the next Commission. And of course, and that's the last priority, we need as well to develop new sovereign capacities that we will need in the future. And here I'd like to mention, for instance, space situational awareness or in-space operation services. Those capacities that we will need to master in the future for sustainability, for resilience, and to give a boost as well to our industry in those new sovereign capacities. So that's quite a dense agenda for the next Commission, an agenda that we want to implement very closely with USPA. I see Rodrigo here. It will have an impact on USPA, clearly, so we will have to think together in terms of what's the impact, how we can evolve USPA in the future. We want to implement this agenda very closely with the European Space Agency, ESA, but also with national space agencies. So the idea is really that we pool resources to ensure that Europe remains a relevant actor, a relevant space global player, while we have lots of third countries developing, investing in assets, and basically investing a lot in space. So here we really need to join forces to ensure that we are up to the challenge and that Europe remains a credible global player that both defends values but defends as well its security interests. And that's really what we want to achieve as part of the Commission as of the 1st of December. Thank you so much. Very happy to be with you again and happy to have some small talks, but we'll have more opportunities to talk through the different agenda points of the Commission during panels. Thank you so much.
Well, Guillaume mentioned close collaboration with the agencies and that the Commission's agenda will have an impact on the European Agency for the Space Programme. So rather fittingly, to talk to us more about that, we have its Executive Director, Rodrigo da Costa. Please join us on stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just set here the microphone. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here today in Budapest at this opening of the EU Space Days. It is an excellent opportunity to meet government officials, policymakers, space actors from industry, from academia, entrepreneurs, and talk about space in all its many dimensions. And I think there is a particular focus this year, and it is actually quite dear to us at USPA, which is how businesses, how governments, how society at large actually benefits from space already today, and how it is going to benefit also in the future. You have a very exciting lineup ahead of you, so I will not bother you with many words on my side. I will try to be brief. The conference is excellently planned. There are many, many opportunities for discussion and exchange, not only during the panels, but also during all the breaks and side activities. And I will pick up a little bit on what Guillaume said and talk a little bit about USPA, the EU Agency for the Space Programme. We are already today quite an important player, working hand in hand with the European Commission, with agencies, with industries to implement this key asset, this critical asset of the Union that is the EU Space Programme. Now, certainly, as the EU Agency for the Space Programme, obviously, we work on the space program. We don't do everything there. We do a number of things. And we actually focus our work, our engagement in three key pillars of activities. First, we are an exploiter. We exploit. So we actually operate. We operate Galileo. We operate EGNOS. We are preparing as well to operate GOVSATCOM. And for that, we are developing right now the GOVSATCOM hub. We are providing the SST front desk, the Space Surveillance and Tracking front desk services, and of course also collaborating with the Commission in a number of other activities. The second element, and it was already mentioned by Guillaume as one of the key areas and the key priorities of the EU at large, and in particular of EU space, is in the domain of security. And security means not only the security of the assets, security of the satellites, of the ground segment, the ground systems, the antennas, physical security, cyber security, radio frequency security, but it means as well more than that. It means as well how the services, how the data, how the signals can be used to help to improve our security. Be it in the civil domain, for example, areas such as disaster management, for police forces, fire brigades, civil protections, but also, of course, in the military and defense domain. Last but not least, a very important focus, and I think you will hear quite a little bit about that in these EU Space Days, is about fostering the uptake. What does this mean? Is making sure that all these signals and this data that we are generating every day arrives to its customers and arrives to those that can make a best use of it. It basically means to develop the competencies, the applications, the capabilities to bring space to our everyday life in many, many economic and societal sectors. Of course, on that we work not only on Horizon. You will hear quite a lot about Cassini in the next day, that we are helping the Commission to operationalize in a number of domains. We are working on the Space Academy, so quite a lot of things to be done. And we do all this because space matters, and because space helps answering some of the priorities, or many of the priorities of the Union, be it the green transition, the digital transition, of course, the resilience of the Union at large, and as well our strategic autonomy. With this I close, wishing you an excellent conference, very exciting discussions, and an excellent pair of days here in Budapest. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for those welcome remarks, and we're now going to start with our first panel, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of put some meat on the bones of what we've already discussed at a higher level now. So give us a couple moments to shake things up on stage a little bit, and we'll get started just in a moment.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. Yes, because I can hear myself as well. I'm Isabella Poldrugo. I'm Deputy Head of Unit for Space Policy in DG DEFIS from the European Commission. And without losing other time, I will invite on stage with me the speakers of the first panel on the evolving of the EU Space Program. So, go in order: Franco Ongaro, Senior Advisor of Leonardo; Davide Vittori, CEO and co-founder of Astrodyne; Karin Olqvist, Head of Strategy and Sustainable Business, Swedish Space Corporation; and Mathilde Alanson, Strategic Project Manager of Kairos. Thank you very much. Please have a seat. I know that is not the most comfortable one, but we were aware of it. So I think a lot was already said by Guillaume de la Brosse and Rodrigo da Costa and the Hungarian Presidency. We are very happy to be today here in Budapest for the EU Space Days. As you know, it's a new format, a little bit more short, but also straight to the point. But as you know, we always had panels on the EU Space Program. And Guillaume said we are at a turning point because we will have a new commission very soon. We will have a new MFF in preparation very soon. So among the different priorities Guillaume listed before, the point here is really to see about the EU Space Program. As you know, probably know, we conclude in June and July what we call the midterm review, so the interim evaluation of the program. The Council, and under the Hungarian Presidency, are preparing Council conclusion on this interim evaluation that will be presented next week in the Compet space in Brussels. What we have found out in the interim evaluation, the program is good, is running good, is implemented accordingly to the rules and the key performance indicator, but we can always do better. Obviously, one of the issues is, what is the program for, is address the user needs. And how we have seen before, user needs are changing, are evolving, are increasing, with a speed that was not the same maybe years ago. Thanks to EUSPA, we develop a lot of services, but since users are very happy, they want more. They want more precisions, there was more revision time, and now, unfortunately, they're also asking more and more for services that can be used for security and military needs. This is why there is a need to rethink a bit the program, to make it more flexible and more fast in reacting. Not only for user needs, but also on technology. Technology is also evolving very fast. Artificial intelligence, connectivity. We have a lot of new space, startups, SMEs that develop a lot of interesting features, and the program until now is very slow to take them on board. So also here we need to be more fast and agile to embark this technology development. Then obviously what also we need, what to do to have this more flexible and agile is to review our way to do procurement, the way to do space business. So procurement process, how to embark new space actors, how to turn more on service buyer and not always developing big infrastructures is one of the elements we found out in the interim evaluation. So even the procurement needs to be more fast and agile and in different steps. Obviously, we need the big primes, but also need to have more and more new actors into the space program. There is already good success stories as the Copernicus dynamic purchasing system, but also there it took 1 year to put it in place. So obviously we need to be more fast. And last but not least, as was mentioned before, access to space, because it's a bottleneck. You can have good services, you have good satellites, but if you cannot launch satellites in orbit, you are stuck on Earth. And today we think in this panel we take another prospection that is the ground segment. So indeed the ground facilities and the testing facility in access to space. I will shortly introduce the panelists and the company they're coming for, and then I will start a first general question and we go deep in the different domain, because today is nice. I mean, I'm very happy of the panel today because we are really covering the full supply chain. We have Frank Ongro for Leonardo. Leonardo, I mean, who doesn't know Leonardo can raise his hands. But just to recall, is a very large Italian multinational company specializing in aerospace, defense, and security. Is doing directly or through its industrial partnership, covers the entire value chain on the space industry, from manufacture of satellites and orbiting infrastructure, production of high-tech equipment and sensors, management of satellite service, and propulsion and launching system. Then we have Davide here with me from Astradyne. That is an Italian startup that develops lightweight and cost-effective deployable solar system and for satellites. Karin Olkvist from the Swedish Space Corporation that provides state-of-the-art spacecraft operation, launch and testing facility that gives to the customer access to space, and among the key assets, there's Range Space Center, set to begin launch satellites, and the Global Ground Station Network for space-to-ground connectivity. And last but not least, Matilde Laranzona, Strategic Project Manager from Kairos, a global environmental intelligence company and world leader in Earth and asset observation technology. Kairos collect data from satellite imagery and use artificial intelligence to help companies, investors, and regulators to reduce their emissions, assess extreme weather events, and accelerate transition to a lower carbon economy. Kairos acts both as data provider and advisor for its client. So as you can see, we have the full supply chain, upstream, downstream, and operation. And we'll start with a very generic question to all of you, since we discuss a bit the future of the EU space policy and the future of the EU space program. What is the main challenge and opportunities that you see for the space in Europe? I will start, if you don't mind, from Franco, David, Karin, and Mathilde, and maybe we go back in the other sense. Franco, you have the micro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Thanks to the organizer. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I'm particularly pleased to be in Budapest because, as my last name says, I'm quite connected to Hungary, so I'm very happy to be here. I think the issues that the space sector has in Europe have been quite eloquently put forward by the previous speakers, Guillaume and De La Silva. Therefore, I will just give 3 points that for me are key to be looked at in the future. And luckily, one of them was already mentioned quite clearly. The first one is, easy to say, money. I mean, we want to be competitive with respect to the US, but the US has spent between 5 and probably 20 times what Europe has spent in the past 60 years. So it's not just having a couple of millionaires that decides to play space rather than the America's Cup and invest a few billions in that as a hobby. But there's a background of an industry and a volume of procurement every year that makes a huge difference. So if we want to play in that league, then somehow we have to play in that league in all senses. The second thing, and I think, as I said, Guillaume said it very well, the money all come from, I'm talking institutional, of course, the money all come from the same taxpayers, and it basically goes to the same space sector. In between, we have various actors. ESA, I mean, EU, EUSPA, ESA, and the member states. Cooperation between these actors is fundamental. Each one of them have their roles and their capabilities, and they're very, very specific, very important. They all need to fit together, and the more this is managed for the next program, the best it be for Europe and for the industry as well. Last but not least, I think we are excellent in putting up infrastructure, but then we're not so good in following through with buying services from that infrastructure. And I think NASA, DoD are showing the way in procuring services rather than infrastructure. But mostly, once we have the infrastructure, let's procure those services to give the chance to this ecosystem to grow up. And I think as you procure system, you also get the user closer to designing the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, some of your points were mentioned before, and some of them are included in the Draghi report that is mainly about the need to invest. Unfortunately, I see a lot of industry. I don't know how many member state representatives are here around the table, because as you mentioned, at the end, our member states are financing in different bodies space, and indeed cooperation is needed. Cooperation is already there. We have, after this panel, also with ESA representative, obviously everything can be done better, but we have, I think, also what we have in the space program demonstrate how Europe with less money was able to do a lot. And without going further, I give the floor to Davide to bring his general overview.
Thank you, Isabella, and it's a pleasure to be here today. So, from my perspective, first of all, I agree with everything that Mr. Ungaro said. I'd like to maybe do or add some remarks on the first point, that of having more money. Of course, having more resources is helpful, but I think we also need to be careful and keep an eye on how we actually allocate those resources. So they might be less, we might not have the firepower of the US, but if we're able to allocate it in a smart way, in a more effective way, then I think we can still be very competitive on a global scale. So what do I mean? I look at this from my perspective, right? The perspective of startups. For me, when we say, how can we be more competitive? How can we be more flexible, more agile? I think of startups. I think of small, medium companies that can bring innovation, that can bring disruption. It is very hard today for startups in the space sector to compete, to be able to be competitive on a global scale, but also in the institutional frame of Europe. These large programs that we often talk about, some of them were mentioned before, it is challenging for startups to even get some breadcrumbs, right? Most of the money is absorbed by the larger companies, by the large system integrators, which of course are necessary. We need those large companies to achieve the objectives that we have. But at the same time, there needs to be some space for experimentation, for disruption, for innovation. There needs to be, I think, space for not only being receptive, but also proactive, meaning embracing the new technologies that the startups can bring, giving them the resources, giving them the space to actually experiment and to eventually bring it to market.
Thank you very much. Then I have a follow-up question for both of you, but I will finish the first round.
Thank you. There's not a lot left to be said. I agree on everything you said. I also have some comments on that. But first, what you said, Franco, about EU, ESA, and the member states needing to, we have to work together to create the critical mass that we need. And I absolutely agree. But I also think we need to be careful not to create an EU bubble that will prevent EU-founded companies to be competitive on the outside, because I still think that we need a global market. The EU market is not enough. It's a great place to start and grow, but then we need to conquer the world. Yeah. And there was something else that you said, yes, the SMEs and the startups. That is actually one of my points that I had to this question, that I think we need to find a way to be less dependent on the already very established and large space players in the EU, in Europe. I fully agree that they are very important, they are absolutely necessary, but we must find a way to become less dependent.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And as it was mentioned, indeed, we are seeing today some driving forces like the digital transition, climate change. And basically, all of those forces are boosting the demand for space-based services for the downstream market. So we expect that more and more users will rely in the near future on space-based data, both public and private users. And also the evolving regulation is really reshaping ways companies are approaching sustainability and risk management. And those are regulations, so the EU Green Deal, the EUDR on deforestation, those changes are really making space data more needed than ever. And we should leverage also this opportunity to better address commercial needs. The EU space program was obviously designed for mainly public stakeholders and policymakers' needs, but we are really underutilizing the opportunity that it opens up for commercial purposes. And now large companies and corporates will have to rely on space data for their environmental reporting, compliance, physical risk assessment, nature impact assessment. So there is here a big room for user adoption in terms of space data. And as it was mentioned, one way Europe can help this user adoption is by relying on this space ecosystem of startups and innovative SMEs, both on the upstream and downstream side. On the upstream, we do have lots of European data providers launching new missions, and those data offering are going to expand the existing capabilities of Sentinels by filling some gaps in terms of spatial resolution, temporal resolution, or by bringing more advances for specific sensors. And on the downstream side, there are also many companies which are basically packaging all of the existing Copernicus sources to make it fit for purpose for very specific commercial applications in very fast-growing market segments such as insurance, finance, agriculture, energy, etc. So yeah, so there is a way for Europe to maintain leadership and also to have a more market-driven approach when it comes to maintaining its position.
Thank you very much. It's really the evolving needs of the users. And thank you very much, Matilde, for your point of view. And indeed, since a couple of years, USPA developed this user platform that was in the beginning only for GNSS, but now is also for Earth observation, absolutely to bring also commercial user on board and to have a market report that covers both. But again, European space sometimes takes its time, so it's developing, but obviously more can always be done. But it's indeed to cover not only the established institutional needs, but also more and more the market sector, the commercial sector, because again, the space program is to provide services. But to provide services, we need a robust and competitive EU industry. So I'm going back to Franco. And the question I had prepared, but then I will add a second one, is indeed how to prepare the industry to be competitive and to provide the critical component and technology that are needed for the EU space program, because it's the title of the panel. But since David and Karin were speaking about the relation between primes and SMEs, I think it's very good to have a question to you, how to not to compete among them, but to cooperate. So how the primes can boost and promote SMEs, and what SMEs and startups can bring to the primes.
Well, first of all, I think European industry per se, it's not so bad. And in fact, coming back to what you were saying, we do most of our business outside Europe, but you need a strong home base in order to face the ups and downs of commercial world, which is what our competitors usually have. And you can see it clearly in what happens when Boeing has a problem or Lockheed Martin has a problem. Then all of a sudden there's a military procurement that helps them along the way. I think the real two things when you talk about components, raw materials, components, etc. I think that's a common problem. Europe is behind in cloud technologies, is behind in, we don't have an NVIDIA at home. Nevertheless, we are able to do things. We fly NVIDIA, we flew microsats with AI on board, etc. The problem is, now that we have a CHIPS Act, we have big investments from the EU on this. Great, don't forget about space. We're a very little industry, but it's very critical for us. And having these big programs that guarantee a certain continuity may help us getting the kind of chips we need. Another discussion is the resilience of the industry. If you make a big program and don't follow through with some acquisition of services and use of it, or promise a big program and then 4 years go by and nothing happens, then industry's got a problem. And That's because we are small in scale and there's not such a big volume that makes us independent. As far as SMEs are concerned, I think we need, and this is across the board, and it's a former director of technology that says it, we need more investment in technology from the companies, from the large companies, from the member states, and from the institutions. If you look at it, you always find money for a big program, trickles down a few monies for launching microsat, CubeSats, etc. I could do it in a corner of my program at ESA, but it's always a steal with respect to the big ones.
Thank you very much. And after we will have panels on the Cassini initiative on access to finance, indeed for SMEs and new companies, and also on Horizon Europe, but that obviously is a drive for innovation. Going back to Davide, you spoke before about procurement. So we discussed a bit about primes and SMEs and startups. If you can develop a little bit more on what could be improved to boost competitiveness and promote new actors, startups and SMEs, and to promote an industry made in Europe, but also, since you and also Karin mentioned the need to expand the market, what can be done also from the European Union perspective, because today is really the panel is to have ideas and discussion also with the industry, what to do better, what couldn't help you. And if you can spend a couple of minutes also maybe to explain what you do, because everyone knows Leonardo, but it's very interesting what you do, and I think it's very interesting that also the public knows.
When you were introducing me, just like you said, everyone knows what Leonardo does. I was hoping you were going to say everyone knows what Astrodyne does. But so we develop solar arrays for satellites. We're a startup based in Bari in Italy. Founded a few years ago, and we are now in the so-called Valley of Death. Okay, so we were founded 2 years ago. We will start commercializing the product next year, but right now we are not, let's say, selling anything. And this is an important point. I'll get back to it in a second. I want to start by answering the question with what is competitiveness for me. For me, competitiveness means being able to sell products and services on a global scale. So having products and services that are as good as or better as anyone else in the world. Okay, not only in Europe, but also in the US, in Asia, and so on. How can we do this? Let's take a step back. So doing space startups, I think is quite hard because of the characteristics of the space market. There's a funny quote from a founder of a space company who said that doing a space startup is like being a baby. You wake up at 3 a.m. and you cry. What's the reason? That there's very high barriers to entry. It's very expensive to get into space, right? To sell products in space. Like I was saying, I'm in the Valley of Death, meaning that right now I have costs. I need to pay employees, I need to do experimentation, I need to buy materials, but I don't have any revenues. So I need resources. I need external funds. These funds can come from investors, mostly, or from institutional procurement, of course. But let's focus on investors. Investors, they want return on their investment. To have return on investment means that the company needs to grow, the startup needs to grow. It needs to be competitive eventually. It needs to be sustainable, financially sustainable in the long term. To be, again, globally competitive, I need to be better or as good as players in the, say, United States. And what is the issue here? Is that it's not really a playing field right now. I was talking to a US investor a few weeks ago, because I'm raising money right now, looking for money, as startups always are. And the investor told me, I really like what you're doing, I like your product, I like your services, I like the team and so on, but I'm afraid of how competitive you will be able to be on a global scale, on the commercial market on a global scale. I invested, and this is the investor speaking, I invested in a US company, like a year ago, US company that 8 months, I think, after it was founded, received a contract from the Space Force, non-dilutive contract, of $60 million, 6-0. So how do you compete with those companies? And the truth is that it's very hard. It's almost impossible to compete. The scale of resources that is available is very different. And so if I cannot be competitive on a global scale, it means that I might be competitive maybe in Europe, but that's a small market. And investors don't want a small market. And so the connection between institutional procurement and competitiveness, I think, is much more direct than people think, Because by having those chances of supporting my R&D, my technological investments and so on, my technological development, thanks to institutional procurement, then I can be more competitive on a global scale, I can attract more investments, I can grow more rapidly, I can bring more innovation to Europe, to the world potentially. So this is the first part of the question. The second part is, do we need to promote a Made in Europe? I think the answer is yes and no. So do we need, as a European continent, do we need to be able to be independent? So have all elements of the value chain from launch to downstream? Absolutely yes. But does this mean confining ourselves and limiting our access to external parties for procurement, but also for the sales process? Absolutely not. I'll give another quick example. We, as I was saying before, we make solar panels. For the solar panels, what you need are solar cells. If I want to buy solar cells, space grade, that are made in Europe, the lead time is more than 2 years. So from the moment I order them to when I get them will be more than 2 years. If I order them from Asia, 10 days. Okay? Considering also the shipment.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
So if I can procure the best, the highest performing, the cheapest product from anywhere in the world, and also I can then sell my products to anyone in the world, that will help me be more competitive, and we will have the trickle-down effects that I was talking about before. So does EU promotion, Made in Europe, need to be important? Yes. Does it need to be a hindrance? Absolutely not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But I think was a bit what Karin was saying before, that obviously we need to be resilient, but also to be open. We are speaking about an open strategic autonomy. And indeed, it was very, very interesting. I mean, as you know, on the Commission, as I was mentioning before, we will have a panel on Cassini and how to help companies on access to finance. But also, I was mentioning at the beginning, we already start within the space program to have this more anchor customer and outcome contracts for new entrants. I was mentioning the dynamic purchasing system for Copernicus. So for the one that don't know, is a system where we procure the contributing mission, so from data not provided by Copernicus, from other constellations, from the commercial sector, and in a faster way and from new entrants or more established companies in the EU and outside the EU. So it was really a good example, but obviously the idea now is to expand it more, to really cooperate big backbones with big primes, but also to plug new companies. And the same is what the Commission is doing together with ESA, and so we can speak about good cooperation with the Flight Ticket Initiative, where also we procure launch services from the commercial market to test technology in space. So we have both benefit, testing technology, so supporting new companies on testing the technologies, but also supporting new access to space companies to provide the service, and again, to have contracts, because we have seen many times, I was also working with Horizon many years ago, that obviously is good to finance at the beginning the technology, but then you need the contracts to produce. And with this, we go back to access to space, not back on Earth, but between Earth and space. I think many points we discuss are very horizontal, access to finance, money, market, but indeed access to space was a bottleneck for a couple of years in Europe. Now we are going back to flight. We have very soon a launch of Copernicus satellites, beginning of December, and we are very looking forward. But indeed, there is a need to invest more in the competitiveness of the access to space market in Europe. And competitiveness is diversification. It doesn't mean necessarily better price, but it's really to have more players, more service, more technologies. And the ground segment is obviously part of it. So we are very happy to have you today. The question, then you can vary it, but it's a little bit what we heard before, how you see the necessary evolution of the space access in Europe. how you see the market's evolution in Europe and outside. And what is the role of the ground segment to promote an access to space ecosystem in Europe?
Ooh. Many questions, many of which have been discussed already, actually. So I think all of this sort of resolves to a space ecosystem. So to have a space ecosystem, we need access to space, and to grant access to space, we need a space ecosystem. So it's a bit of a hen and the egg kind of situation. But I think where do I start? With the market. Well, the European market isn't huge. We can see that we from our side we haven't launched our first satellite yet from Esrange, but we will soon. We probably won't focus only on the European market, because we see that we have several spaceports being built. Ours is one. We have Andøya in Norway, and we have Saxavord in Scotland. And the market it's a big market out there. Maybe the European market isn't the only market that we need to aim for, but there's also the US market, and we know that they have also a shortage of launch sites, because they have piled up launches waiting to be performed as well. And if we can find a way to collaborate between the EU or in this case Europe and the US, I think that would be a great idea. And also, when it comes to strategic autonomy, I think it's called nowadays. Yeah.
Open strategic autonomy.
Open strategic autonomy, yes. Which is a good word, or a good description, I think. I think that's very important, because I think there are areas where we, as Europe or even the EU, need to be independent. There are very security relevant areas, but there are also areas where we need to be strong enough to be a very relevant partners to others who have the capability that we need. So again, having a very strong ecosystem, space ecosystem, and a strong industry makes us strong enough to create these partnerships where we can provide enough value to someone for them to provide value back for us. And I think that is something that we sometimes forget when we talk about autonomy, that it doesn't necessarily have to be that we do everything, because just as David said as well, if we try to do everything, I'm not so sure we can afford that.
Thank you very much. But indeed, in recent communication we had as the European Space Strategy for Security and Defense, in the economic strategy that published a couple of years ago, partnership is a key element of it, because even in the space and security, you cannot do it alone. I mean, you need to partner with other countries, with other institutions, with international organizations. I think about NATO, and is a key element, and even more challenging nowadays. There is a lot of talks on the EU elections and the consequence of the EU elections. And indeed, on just a short remark on what you say, you say that obviously what we are doing on the Commission side is promote aggregation, at least in the access to space domain, but also in other sectors, like energy, critical raw materials. One of the key words, if you read the guidelines of the President of the Commission, but also in the several mission letters, is aggregation of the demand. So aggregate European demand, aggregate the demand from member states, and why not also the commercial one, to have a win-win situation. And again, as the Flight Ticket Initiative, you support both the launcher companies and the testing companies. So aggregation should be a way to enlarge and expand the market, but also to provide better services to the company in need.
Yeah, I agree, it could be as well. But also I think we need to, again, consider the open strategic autonomy also here. because there are situations where others do things better than we do. So if we can collaborate with them and learn from them, and then start doing it ourselves, I think that could be a way to increase the pace of our development.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And speaking about aggregation and bottlenecks, we go back to the downstream sector. That indeed is not a bottleneck, what I was saying at the beginning. The problem is that the program is already very good, so the users want more. And the question is, how you already answered it a bit before, but obviously also speaking about the discussion today, if you have other remarks, other tips to promote even more the use of space data and the use of European space data, or how the program can be more fast in reacting to evolving needs from the user, from the commercial sector in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are different ways in which European institutions can act, and it's at different levels. The first one is really to promote and enable user access and consumption of Earth space data directly. And this is obviously the long-term bet, or long-term play, because it requires user adoption, change management. So this is quite hard to get, and I can expand a bit more after that. The second one is really to rely on this ecosystem of very dynamic and agile startups that will unlock commercial use for the EU by working directly with those big corporates and private actors. And the third one, as it was also mentioned before, is by really using Earth data as an enabler to enforce the existing and upcoming regulations. So having this very virtuous feedback loop where regulation incentivize companies to use space data, as it's one of the, usually regulations are quite effective to change the company's behavior. So on the first one, which is about how do we empower, how do we embark private stakeholders to use Earth observation data. So what do users want? So the insights that came from the latest user consultation platform, which is the main meeting to aggregate and gather the needs from the users. So users say that they want easy to use, accessible, manipulable data sets, seamlessly integrated into their workflows at a very reasonable cost. So that's obviously easier said than done. And also the reality of it is that many of those private stakeholders are, first of all, very unfamiliar with space data. So I'm not even talking about they don't know how to integrate or process this data. They're just not aware of this. They're not aware of the inherent benefits of space data in terms of coverage, accuracy, granularity, revisit time. So there is here geospatial advocacy to be made, either directly via the European institutions or via startups and basically SMEs like our company. And what we do is, what we found is that usually it takes between 12 to 18 months to advocate, to do a proper geospatial advocacy for big corporates. And I'm talking about the most sophisticated players in each field, so the ones who are already quite advanced on this topic, who are already, who have heard about geospatial data, and who are willing to take a bet that this type of new data will be essential for their workflows and for their future business applications. So there is this, raising awareness about the use of geospatial data. And this is a work that we have also been conducting not only with the private stakeholders, but also with the public authorities. So we're also working with the French firefighters, for instance. And as well, they were not even aware of all of the possibilities that are enabled by this type of data. So then there is also the second challenge, which is the lack of in-house capabilities and technical profiles to properly process, understand and integrate this type of data. So most of the time this type of data sets needs some remote sensing, GIS specialist that not all companies have. And so either they outsource this part of processing to dedicated companies like ours, who are basically doing all of this image treatment part and the processing and analysis that we do to really gather and extract the most useful information from raw Copernicus data to really deliver something which is actionable directly and can be integrated into their workflows. So there's also this question of how do you get the right technical capabilities there. So this is one. And then obviously there's sometimes the mismatch between existing technical capabilities that we have in terms of resolution and the use cases and the most pressing use cases of those private sectors. Of course, we have had a bias in the use cases that we have to develop based on the matching between the satellite capabilities and what the market wanted. But there is still a very untapped number of use cases which we hope to unlock with new satellite capabilities as we increase the frequency, the revisit time, the resolution. Most of the time we are facing this trade-off between having a solution which is scalable anywhere in the world at a decent cost that provides enough granularity and accuracy. And the limitations most of the time is that we need very high resolution images, so meaning that it's not scalable.
Thank you very much. And more investment to have more satellites for Copernicus. So we go back to money from the beginning of the discussion we had today. No, it was very, very interesting. And indeed, we have panels later tomorrow on skills, and also Youth Public Commission is developing a lot of tools to promote the use of technical profiles and to promote the use of data outside space, and obviously the U-Space Days, or the U-Space Week as it was before, in another tool. And this is why we move from the week to the days, because the days are shorter but back-to-back with other larger events. For example, this morning there was a panel within the European Union SME week. Indeed, there was the idea to bring space and to attract and to touch and to speak to other programs. I was personal parenthesis in an event on pharmaceutical industry a couple of weeks ago, and they were laughing, what you do here, you're from space. I said, you know what, we have a health Copernicus hub. We have a lot of application on health and the pharmaceutical system. So it's true that the application you can have is just a matter of innovation and think about what you want and just find the right space data to do it. Now, since even if we are providing state-of-the-art timing service, we are running late. So no question and answer from the public, but I hope the speakers will stay with us in the afternoon and later today. So if you have questions, just approach them, and I think they will be happy to answer. But I will just ask you a final remark. Maybe we start with Mathilde and we go the other round. What you grasp from this discussion today, this afternoon?
That we already have a lot of existing systems in place, and we don't necessarily need more, but we need to do better with what we have as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. We need to do something better, or something different, I'd say, with what we have. And I think one of the ways we need to do this is that we need to be sure that we keep an open market to increase competitiveness, but also provide the support that the companies and others need.
For me, it's again about procurement. So I'm not an expert in procurement, not a policymaker, but I really struggle to understand why it's so hard to make the procurement process a bit more agile, a bit more flexible, a bit more friendly also for smaller companies. Maybe again, taking inspiration from the US, where it's based on services, procuring services, where the contracts are based on milestones. So you start with a broad pool of companies that can access the contract, and then incrementally you narrow the funnel. So the companies that are actually able to meet the objectives, they move forward and they get more money, right? And maybe in that way we can have the new intuitive machines, the new Axiom, the new SpaceX is too much, of Europe, and be more competitive not only as companies, but also as sovereign capabilities.
Well, I think it shows that this is an industry which is mature, made the step from what it was to what it is now. So I fully agree that it has to be open. I mean, we sell helicopters in all the world. We don't make helicopters engine, we buy them from outside Europe because that's where they come from. So that's clearly one step of being mature. My take on this is, however, let's not forget in this, and this was perhaps my biggest criticism with the Draghi paper, let's not forget about science. Because Copernicus was built on the science that we did before, and science is one of the areas where Europe excels. And when you speak, for instance, to attracting new generations and stimulating, I think going back to the cooperation between ESA and Commission should really appropriate itself with the ESA scientific and exploration results, because you have a huge responsibility. And the US does that. NASA is a propaganda machine for the US. Russia, China are doing that, and we don't. And it's a pity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was very interesting and inspiring debate. Food for thought from us and from the industry and the public here. On procurement, obviously, we want to do better. We have, as you know, Commission is a big machine, but one really of the aim of the new Commission is reduce administrative burden and to do it more fast. Obviously, it's taxpayer money, as Frank was saying in the beginning. So we are very reliable towards the others. I mean, sometimes you really need to be able to do it and to answer questions from the taxpayer on what you do. But for sure, burden reduction, faster process, space law is also going this direction, and the new Commission is going this direction for space, but not only. Thank you very much. No, this is the closing remarks of the previous panel. No, thank you very much. I'm sorry for the question and answer for the public, but really, if you have a question, just approach us and we'll be happy to answer you. Thank you very much.
Ah, yes, now you can hear me. Excellent. Thank you so much, Alex, and welcome again, everybody, for the next panel, which will be about defense. How can we unlock the potential of defense for space? As mentioned briefly in my introduction, it's going to be quite high on the agenda of this commission. Commissioner Kubilius is very much interested in defense and how we can best use space for defense and for the security of Europe. So I'm very pleased that we have a good lineup of panelists for this very interactive discussion. So I'd like to call on stage Chiara first. So Chiara Manfletti, she's working as the CEO of Neuraspace, which is a startup. Chiara has a long experience in space, DLR, ESA, and heading the Portuguese Space Agency, and then she decided to take a next challenge, which was Neuraspace, a new space company. So we'll hear more about Neuraspace. Then I'd like to bring to call on stage Colonel Mattia, please, Colonel Mattia. So you're from the Polish Ministry of Defense. You have a long experience as well in defense. You were posted in SHAPE in Mons for NATO, and now you're working on space and how you can use space capacities for defense armed forces in Poland. So you will tell us more about that. Then the next panelist is Bertrand Denis. Bertrand, welcome. So you are working for TAS, Thales Alenia Space. We're talking here about an established company. You have a long experience in Thales. You have experience as well in running business for defense. And now you are the VP for observations and sciences in Thales. You're guiding one of the key projects very close to the heart of the Commission, which is in-space operation services. You will tell us more about that. The next panelist is Kaspar Gresiak from ICEYE. Welcome, Kaspar. So you've joined ICEYE in 2021 after INSEAD, you told me, so good move as well. And you are heading the sales and business development department for ICEYE. ICEYE is used to be is no longer a startup, it's a scale-up. But you will tell us more about the company, but you're very active as well on defense, helping some armed forces, and so that's why it's very interesting as well to have you. So we have a nice combination of governments, companies, small and bigger companies, so I'm very happy to have all of you on the panel. Just as a background, you know, on Commission side, we used to have silos between space and defense. We started breaking silos between space and defense already 5 years ago when we decided to bring together the space program and the defense portfolio within one single directorate general, so one single ministry, if you want. That was a first move to break silos between space and defense and see how we could synergize space and defense. Then the next move was in 2023, 1 year after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. There was, for the first time ever, a space strategy for security and defense, and that was precisely one to see how we can unlock the use of space for defense and how we can better protect our space system. So that was the next move. And now the third move will come soon with this new commission, where again we will very much increase synergies between space and defense, because space is crucial for defense. Maybe let's start from the governmental viewpoint. As an end user of defense capacities, I'd like to turn to you, Greg, because Poland is of course at the forefront when it comes to security and defense in this geopolitical context. You're very much developing space capacities in Poland, including for defense purposes. I understand that you're considering establishing a space command as well. So I very much like to hear from you how you see space for defense. What does it mean for the defense ministry, space, and where are you investing? What's your strategy when it comes to investment in space?
So, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And to be honest, I'm very flattered to be here because I come from the country which is at the beginning of the way to the military space. So, which have just started building the capabilities. So, but the Poland is in a very specific place. Our neighboring country, the Ukraine, is under full-scale war with the Russia. So we can say that we can feel the war also in my homeland. So that's true. That the war in the Ukraine has has a big impact on the Polish armed forces. Once it happened, our decision makers decided that it's a high time for the really robust modernization of the armed forces. And in this big program, turned out that there is also the place for the space. But I cannot say that that all happens because of the war in the Ukraine, because it's all started like 15 years ago when we started thinking about the space and the military application of the space. And it was the first moment we built the first time the operational requirements, especially for the Earth observation. And we built the imaging center. So it was 10 years ago that the imaging center got the final operation capability, and the main task of this center is to change the image data into the operational products. So there was another turnout, the turning point. There was a turning point. It was 2019 when the NATO declares that the space is an operational domain. And since this moment, we started building the structure in Poland, which was, technically speaking, the first moment there was the space branch. And the space branch took this task prepare the structure for the future. And we have been working on the concept of employment. We have been working in the implementation plan. And 2022, February, the war in Ukraine started, and it was really the boost for our space capability building. So we decided to purchase our sovereign capabilities at the end of the 22 December. Poland signed a contract to get 2 satellites for the Earth observation. What are our main goals? So there are 2 areas we'd like to get independence. There are 2 areas we'd like to get own capabilities. The first one is the SATCOM, secure SATCOM, and the second is the Earth observation. And of course, there are other applications, there are other services we are using and we would like to use, like GNSS system, like any Shelley warning, missile warning system, and maybe information which comes from space-based SIGINT capabilities. So, but as is now, so there is the decision made that the Polish Armed Forces should get in the future the capabilities, especially on the SATCOM and the Earth observation. Of course, the different type of the sensor, we are keeping in mind that Earth observation, there are different types of sensors, so we'd like to create the robust constellation which can give us the proper data stream to help us build the really complex operational picture and change this data into in the operational products, which could be disseminated through the armed forces. So where we are as we speak, where we are now. So we are in the moment that we started building the Space Operations Center. I'm the commander, and we started building the ground segment for the future satellites, for the future satellite system. Are we going to open the Space Command? Maybe, but as we speak, we don't really speak about the Space Command. We would like to finish what was started. We would like to get the final operation capabilities of the Space Operations Center and the ground segment. And after that, we're gonna gather the lesson learned, and maybe there will be the moment to introduce to implement the space command, because today the number of the personnel which will be dedicated to the space mission is about 100. So maybe it's not the number which could give us the clear permission from the decision maker to open the space command. So what we are focusing now, we are focusing on the building of the capabilities which help us, which allow us to run our satellites.
Thank you so much. So very much focusing on Earth observation, SATCOM, capacity building in terms of structures. So, but you do run business step by step. So that's very good. Now I'd like to move to you, Kasper, because actually ICE is very interesting. You started your business. Actually, it was through Horizon 2020, small grants as part of Horizon 2020. That was the kind of the start of the company. You were focusing very much on monitoring, how climate change is affecting the Arctic region. And today you have the largest constellation in the world when it comes to SAR satellites, and you're working very closely with defense ministries, including outside Europe. So this is an amazing journey. So can you just tell us, how that shift in your mission has happened over time, and what does it mean for you responding quickly to different defense needs?
Sure, certainly, thank you. So thank you very much for having us here. It's a pleasure and honor with Colonel Mattia to be representing Poland in such a tough time as we find ourselves right now as a continent, really. ISI didn't really choose to be in the aerospace and defense sector, or rather we started in the aerospace and gradually migrated into defense, whether we wanted or not. As the name suggests, ISI, we were meant to monitor the progression of glacial, well, I guess glaciers themselves, and any kind of melting of the polar caps, but quickly we found more and more commercial applications for the radar technology. For those that are unaware of what SAR is and what the radar satellites are, optical imagery is like Google Maps or you know, for some images from the Copernicus program, but radar imagery penetrates through clouds and sees at night, so it provides a reliable 24/7 monitoring capability, something that optical satellites well cannot always do. And so essentially once the conflict broke out in the Ukraine in February 2022, we of course were actually monitoring this entire buildup of the Russian military at the borders of Ukraine 3-4 months prior to the invasion, and inside our company, we were all speculating that an actual invasion might take place, but obviously the world was saying, no, it's just exercises. So quite frankly, you know, as a startup with just a few assets on orbit at the time, it was quite amazing that we had better intel than most of the countries in the world. But I don't mean to brag here, it's simply the nature of how things are. And so with that, naturally, you know, initially, being a Polish-Finnish company, since we have 100 people working in our Warsaw office, we have 400 people working in the Helsinki office, we were a bit hesitant to openly support anything to do with the conflict, really. Well, given the proximity of both Poland and Finland to the Russian border. But eventually it just became inevitable. And once our images became not only used by the Ukrainians, you know, from time to time, but they actually became integrated completely into their operational structure. So really, because of ISI's 38 satellites on orbit, now we were, back then it was somewhere around 20, but we were already able to provide revisit rates of somewhere between, you know, 1 hour to 2 hours, which actually became not even operational. It became even an option to use ISI imagery for tactical purposes. Literally, our images were being sent to soldiers on the front using even applications such as Signal. I mean, I know this violates any known protocol, but it just worked. And so we didn't have a choice. We simply ended up following that path. And so exactly, I think a year and a half ago, we managed to sell an entire, actually, we didn't sell, the Ukrainian people had a fundraiser for a Bayraktar drone. Turkey ended up actually giving this Bayraktar drone for free to the Ukrainians as a sign of goodwill, but they were left over with a budget which they then used to buy one of our satellites. And so they actually have an entire satellite dedicated just to their operations. And so the intelligence of Ukraine notoriously posts updates about just how many targets were eliminated thanks to our imagery. I will leave that for you to find on the internet. So yeah, it's really defense found us. We didn't really have that planned.
Thank you so much. So really, defense has been a big drive now for the company, and very timely. So and very good to see actually that what you've done was really producing intelligence for tactical purposes. So very interesting to see that as a move. I'd like to move now to Bertrand. So Bertrand, you are in Thales Alenia Space. You're one of the key players of the European space industry, and you are developing in charge of a big project which is about in-space operation services. So it's about robotics in space, but with wide range of applications. It's really a brand new field, but I'd like to hear from you which are the applications that may be of interest for governmental purposes. So what it is about exactly in-space operation services, and which are the applications that can be interesting for governmental users, like a defense ministry as well, like Poland's, but other defense ministries, keeping in mind indeed that space more and more is a contested area, and there are things that happen over there on orbit that we need to carefully monitor.
Sure. Very pleased to be in Budapest and impressed to have been introduced on the music of the Avengers. Yes, the bar is a bit too high. Just to answer your question, we're talking about in-orbit services or in-orbit applications. To go one step after the other, the first kind of application is inspection. Capability to identify, to characterize the attitude of one specific satellite. This is the first application. Second application is all what is related to the life cycle management of satellite, from the station keeping to the relocation, to the control attitude takeover, to the refueling, which is a brand new capability that could be of real help, till the deorbitation. And maybe in the midterm, we are talking about, for application, maintenance and repair, which is the next step to go. And the final one, probably in the midterm, after this decade, is the assembly in space. So all these services are fully dual. What I mean is that for inspection, for instance, it is linked to intelligence. It is really part to build a space situational awareness, to be able to identify clearly which satellite is close to one we have, and which kind of behavior or style, maybe, it could have. So this is a real service that could be of interest for the Ministry of Defense, because it's really part of the intelligence. For all what is related to the life cycle management, I think it's enable the capability to make planning and execution of a mission. So it's really something that is the vocabulary of military people. It's the extent of the range of action of one satellite to be able to protect, to deter whatever threat we can find. We spoke as well about logistics, and logistics is a real part of the military business, I should say this way, about maintenance and repair, about refueling. So once again, a capability that is of interest for the military people. So all this is really a bunch of applications that are fully dual. About the technology we are using to do that, it's the same thing. There is two main technologies to master to do that. Robotic and rendezvous. So these two technologies are not mastered at this stage fully by Europe. There is still a foot behind the US or even China. Just to remind, I think you saw it, but China brought back on Earth some samples from the moon, from the far side of the moon. This year it was a demonstration of their mastering about the rendezvous and robotic. So we are just a feet behind, but we are not doing nothing. We are on our way to do it. It started some years ago on the impulsion of the European Commission in the framework of the Research and Innovation Framework. And so now there is a project. It gave birth to a project called EROS. EROS is a project dedicated to the in-orbit servicing. There is 18 partners, both industry and academic, coming from 9 countries. So as Standard Space, we are proud to lead this consortium. And there is two main goals for this project. The first one is technology. We intend to raise the technological readiness level, the TRL, to a level 6, to a demonstration on the ground that it's working in 25, so next year, for the robotic, for the rendezvous, for the computing power, and for the interfaces. And the next step of the project will be in 28, not far from now, with an in-orbit demonstration of an exchange of payload, of a refueling capability, and an extension of space life of one satellite. So we are on our way. We just have to keep on.
Thank you so much. So very interesting, because what you're developing is like space is not passive. There are things that happen there, and here it's about having the ability for us, Europe, globally, to really, I use that term because it's very much defense loaded, but still act in space. So having the possibility indeed to perform some, you said it, execute some operations in space. That means that you need to know, you need to understand the kind of dynamics in space. And actually it brings me to you, Chiara, because you will tell us, but Neurospace is specialized in space traffic management. But now you are participating in projects that are more defense related as well, that are touching space domain awareness, which is about really intelligence, so detecting, characterizing certain hostile behaviors in space. So can you tell us a bit more, for large audience, what's the difference between space traffic management and space domain awareness, and what it means for a company like you, because you are dealing with kind of different set of data, more or less sensitive, depending on that set of data. You're talking to civilian customers, to defense customers. So what does it mean for a company like yours, handling two different set of data in terms of confidentiality?
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Maybe just before I answer your question, Guillaume, I would like to perhaps emphasize that when we talk about civil and defense, it isn't a world which is black and white. When I discovered it, I was head of the Portuguese National Space Agency, and I was talking to defense players a lot, and I discovered, if you will, one of the highest missions that defense actors have, which is civil protection. And for me, civil protection is where defense isn't the hard defense, where when we think of defense, we think of military, we think of guns, but civil protection is something completely different, right? And space is naturally dual use, and it has a soft side, which is extremely important. And space covers this transition from something which is very civil to something which is more strongly defense. And when I was at ESA, we set up our space safety activities and security activities under the headline of for peaceful purposes. Now, when it comes to your specific question, the difference between space traffic management and space domain awareness is that, and definitions are key. Space domain awareness includes many different things, space traffic management, including space traffic management. Space traffic management is about ensuring that when objects move in space, they will not collide with one another, both causing harm to themselves, as well as creating debris, which obviously pollutes the environment. So it's about making sure that the congested environment doesn't get even worse, more worsely congested. Now, space domain awareness is about, as you were saying, understanding the behavior of objects in space, both from just a pure behavioral point of view, but also to understand if there's any, say, malicious intent associated with that, which is important also in case something happens, which could be linked to a collision happening. One must understand if it was intentional or just accidental. Why? Because you also don't want things to escalate if there's no reason for things to escalate, right? So it's important to understand. Now, how do we deal with it? At Neurospace, the company's 4 years old, so we're still quite young, but we've achieved quite a lot already. We've set up a space domain platform, and this platform is built on a number of technologies, which includes our, obviously, software architecture, our AI machine learning proprietary models, and I'll get back to that in a second, automation, and data and sensors. And data, obviously, is key. And through this space domain awareness platform, we instantiate products. Now, these products aren't just black and white, either for operators and commercial operators or just for defense. Let me give you an example. When we examine objects in space, we can use AI and machine learning models to classify how these objects behave. And when we build these behavioral models, they end up creating something which we call the taxonomy of the objects in space. We use then this taxonomy, which allows us to better describe how these objects behave in space, to build up better models. These better models can be used for orbit propagation. Orbit propagation is important for, again, collision avoidance. But it's also important to understand, is someone coming too close for comfort? Is someone doing something malicious? So again, the baseline of our technologies is the same for either. But then we can instantiate different products which go more closely into the requirements of either commercial or civil or defense needs. Now, it's true that there are different data requirements or different more general requirements. What we have noticed, however, that the biggest difference in requirements comes from how mature players are. So if I compare a new space company, which was a year old, and an established player that's been in space in GEO and is now looking to operate in LEO that's been in space for 30 years,
that's where I will actually see the biggest difference in requirements, and not necessarily between civil and defense.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Very interesting. So let's move to the next chapter of this panel. We see, I mean, that we have companies offering different applications or services for defense purposes or dual-use purposes. And we have defense ministries that are testing those applications, those services, developing new assets for their own purposes, or sometimes buying services from companies. So, and at the same time, you have the European Commission that will soon prepare the next EU space program, so the legal basis for the European space policy, defining, you know, the different contour of the space flagships, what we can do, what we can't do. So, Greg, I'd like to turn to you now again. So if you could tell us a bit more in terms of, one, which are your expectations when it comes to the future EU space program in terms of unlocking possibility to develop new services that would serve the armed forces across Europe. So that's number one. So how can we ensure that the EU space program, so the flagships like Galileo, Copernicus, IRIS2 can really serve the needs of the defense ministries? And then what I'd like to hear from you as well is, you know, you have different players, different companies, including in Poland. So can you tell us how you partner with those companies, including in terms of buying services from certain companies? We've heard about ISI, for instance. What's your strategy when it comes to buying services or data from new players or established companies in Poland?
Thank you for this question. To be honest, there are two parts of this question, so maybe I will start with the easier one. So since the moment I assumed the position of the space branch head, one of my tasks was to meet with the different companies which potentially might deliver or service or data or even the complex solution. So we discussed a lot, and the companies try to advertise their products, system, solution, and of course we discuss. So, but what is the most important during the meeting? So if we go for this kind of meeting and we go for this kind of presentation, so we always have with us with our requirements, let me say, space requirements. But requirements is not just only for the requirements, because if we start from the beginning, there is always the specific country which has a specific armed forces, and there is the specific geography and geopolitics, specific neighbors, and there is the specific model of the armed forces, and there are the specific domain the specific armed forces would like to conduct the operation. So just there are many elements which should fit each other. So for Poland, from just a couple of years, there is also the space, and there are the requirements. So so there are the companies that are coming for this kind of meeting, and they are very good prepared. And you know, they know the construct, they know how it works. They know that armed forces is just the one element of the national security system, and are very good prepared. And they know how to discuss with the military. And they hire the previous military personnel. So it's very easy to speak with this kind of companies, because they see the background, they see the context, and they understand that we are not looking just for a space enterprise solution, but we're looking for the specific solution which fits to the overall. So there are the companies. Sometimes I met with the companies which just come to us with great products. They advertise the products, and there was the conclusion, hey guys, this is great products, you have to take this product. You have to buy this product because it's great. Okay, the product is great, but does not fit with our requirements. So regardless, it's a private or not private company. So based on my experience, and this, I think it's very important for every company to understand the background of the specific armed forces, to understand the level of ambition, and also understand what are the financial capability which specific country or specific armed forces can afford. So of course, if there is the company which propose the complex solution, a solution which meets our requirements, and this is the best solution of the market, and the price is the best on the market, and if hopefully the company has a Polish flag, so let me see, the chance that we're gonna get this solution is higher, yeah? But for us, that always the start point are the requirements. The solution has to fit our requirements. Of course, like I said at the beginning, Poland is at the beginning of this development process. So sometimes even we don't know what we don't know, yes? So we build our requirements, we think are very good in this moment, but maybe because our knowledge and expertise gonna grow and grow and grow. So in the 3, 4, 5 years, this requirement will be completely different, yeah. And also, what is very important for the military part of the, for my armed forces, there are the different concepts. Like currently, there is multi-domain operation concept, and the space has a very specific role in the multi-domain operation concept. Yeah, we have not considered this earlier. Now we are thinking about this, how we can prepare the Polish space component to support multi-domain operation. So now I would like to go to the first part of the question. So what the European Union can do for the Polish, for the security system, for the other nations. So like I said, probably Poland will not be able to build super robust system which can give us every information every moment in every moment we want. Probably it would not be possible. So there is always space for enhancements, support, and cooperation. Like I said, their observation and the SATCOM is very important for us. We're still gonna use. We are not gonna develop our PNT constellation. We're still gonna use this or GPS or Galileo. So we do not have the ambition to do so. But we would like to have the service. We'd like to have the service to know the service is secure, so that it's not easy to jam. For example, the GPS signal, which happens currently quite often in the north part of the Poland. So we witness quite often the jamming of the GPS signal or PNT signal, which probably comes from the jammer from the Kaliningrad Oblast or the Belarus. So there are many ways, and there are many capabilities and of course we have to remember that the timeline. So the timelines matter for us. Yeah. We have plans, we do not have the capability yet, but once we have the capability, which would be first 2 satellites, maybe another 4 satellites, and so on and so on. So there is the huge space for the cooperation with the European Union, but we have to speak each other. This is very important that the European Union also has to understand our requirements, and we have to understand what European Union or other organization can really deliver to us.
Very interesting, because you were very much insisting on the term requirements. That people need to understand the requirements of armed forces. Which is very interesting when it comes to the EU space program. So one of the open question is, how do we bring defense ministries closer to the European space program so that we indeed fully understand the requirements of the defense ministries? This is one open question. But 2, it's quite interesting as well, because actually, space is so dynamic that sometimes the military does not conceive certain requirements, because they will discover in talking to certain companies a new set of services. So there is as well, you said, so you have one approach which is like being driven by requirements, but sometimes the military is very much opportunistic as well. So they look at space as a marketplace, test a bit certain services or certain technologies, and then, and this is where it's quite interesting for them to have plenty of different actors. They can, go for 1-year contract, test a service, and then on that basis develop certain requirements. So you have this opportunistic approach as well. And actually it brings me to you, Bertrand, because in-space operation and services is a new field, I'm not aware about defense ministries coming up with heavy requirements on that. I understand that defense ministries are highly interested observing what's happening, and at some point they will certainly come up with requirements. But I think it would be very interesting to see how we can develop in-space operation services from a kind of civilian perspective, and how that could become interesting for the Defense Ministry at a certain point. So can you tell us how you see Commission pushing this project to make it interesting as well at some point for the Defense Ministries?
Yeah, maybe to take it one step after the other, the expectation of the defense customer will be threefold, probably. First one is the time to market, let's call it this way. So I guess they will prefer much to get less ambitious service, but sooner. So there is a question of delivery of the service as soon as we can, because to refine the concept of operation, and I fully understand the difficulty for the Ministry of Defense to define the concept of operation and the requirements, we need to test. We need to put something in space to be able to use it and to see what is working and what is not working. So first priority will be the availability or the time to market. Second one is probably the reliability. So we intend to protect assets, but we need to make sure that we will not damage them by trying to protect them. So there is a huge concern of our customers, and especially the defense customer, about the capability we will provide to secure the operation, to be able to act in space, but in a safe way, without damaging any of the critical assets they may have. And the third one is probably the security. It's really a concern for the whole chain, so the space segment, the ground segment. It has been said by the previous panel, even for the services and data, I think there is a real capability to be attacked on all these segments. So we should provide a very secure solution. Last year we made at another contest made by ESA, and Thales won the contest by demonstrating that we were able to hack a satellite, to take over a satellite control, which is a demonstration made on all satellites. So it's, but nevertheless, it shows that there is some vulnerability we have to tackle. So this is for the expectation of the customer. From the industry perspective, I think if we want to go fast, the biggest expectation we may have, it will refer to what was made before. We need some money, but we are able to attract some investors, provided that we are able to demonstrate that there is a business plan, there is some revenues in front of expenses. It was stated by Davide just before. And to do that, all the business plans that are flying are usually based on the fact that the institution are paying the non-recurring cost. So it could fly, investors can put some money inside, but usually they need to be ensured that the non-recurring costs are paid. And this is probably a condition. Second one being that among the first customers, there will be an anchor customer being the institution, so the EC, for instance. So this is something for sure that is needed. And last point, to be short, I think on the industry side, we need to standardize interfaces. There is a lack of standard today that is really a handicap. And we need to try to standardize as well as the concept of operation to make sure that what we're developing is responding to the same kind of requirements.
Thank you very much for this very interesting point. So I fully agree the time to market for the defense is key because, as you said it, they want to test, especially when it comes to new services. Then when it comes to developing a solid and robust asset, that's something else. But at least to be convinced that something is delivering for the military, they want to go quick for that. Chiara, I'd like to move to you because here we've heard how companies can attract private investors. And I'd like to understand from you, what is your expectation when it comes to the EU space program to accelerate the innovative potential of a company like yours? And I'd like to understand as well the fact that, for instance, you are now in a project related to the European Defence Funds, the fact that you may have customers that are defense ministries, what's the impact on investors? Is it positive impact? Is it a kind of lucky warm impact? So I think it would be very useful to understand that as well.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I love the question. To reduce the tension, they love it.
Excellent.
Why? Of course, because government, defense, everything was institutional. In a sense, provides long-term stability, right? So it's something positive that investors see. However, there's another side of this, right? And let me start from your first question, which is how can the EU Space Program help? The way I see it is that we in Europe have the ambition of looking eye to eye with the US and other global players. And at the moment, we heard it also in the previous panel, in terms of, let's say, money-wise, we're not quite there yet. And obviously, we'll see if we get there. But one way of getting there is also making sure that our the public sector investments really create multipliers so that we can raise even more private investments, right? So every euro that a public sector invests will create at least 1 or 2 that a private will invest. Now, how do you do that? You do that by making sure that these companies can actually sell services. And we heard this already. Now, there's many programs across Europe and nationally as well. Eurospace was lucky enough to win one of the post-COVID economic recovery funds projects of Portugal. And these projects are aimed at developing products also for the public sector. Now, the problem is that in terms of buying services, governments don't buy as much as they could, or they don't buy as much as fast as they could. Let me give you some examples. We were talking to also defense ministries across Europe, and in one particular conversation, obviously I won't mention which one, we were told, before we start, let me just set expectations. By the time we set requirements to the time that we can actually procure, 5 years go by. So we should have started talking to them before Eurospace was even born. Now, these are cycles which are just, they're too long. A startup is alive and dead in 4 years. Another example, USST is a wonderful initiative because it brings together infrastructure of different member states, it pools infrastructure, it also pools need. But for a company to buy these services, you have to apply to 5 different portals in 5 different languages with 5 different set of rules. And for a startup, again, maybe for an established player that has business development units in every country that has, it works. But for a startup, this is like mission impossible. It's like trying to climb a mirror. So I believe that the EU Space Program or the Europe can create a single market. In the Draghi report, again, I think the topic of fragmentation is very clear. We have 23 sub-markets in the whole space and defense market, which is a huge hurdle. On the plus side, the MFF creates long-term financial viability, right? So if we could overcome this fragmentation and marry that with the long-term funding and financial planning that we have, oh my God, that would be heaven for us, right? So that's certainly one thing. But on the other hand, so in addition to having programs which invest in, de-risking, in supporting companies to invest in innovation, put real programs, big programs in place that can help companies sell products and sell services, that would be fantastic. Just to, again, numbers, because I think numbers give a comparison. US, in space domain awareness, if we look at some potential or competitors that we have, contracts are generally of the size of 20 million for 2 to 3 years. And these have been sort of dispensed to, let's say, 6 players. If we look at similar elements in Europe, then on the one hand, we have, as I said, these cycles which are enormous, 5 years, as I was mentioning, and then contracts which are, let's say, if you're lucky, 700K or so, which is just very difficult. I was talking to the NATO Innovation Fund. I was talking to also non-NATO investment funds. They always look to see who's buying your service. And if you have governments, if you have defense, they love it. Of course, they love it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I very much like your wording about defragmentation and long-term predictability. That's a nice wording. I just, Casper, turning to you because we've heard that Earth observation provides intelligence capacity. This is quite high on the agenda of several defense ministries across Europe. On the EU side, we have Copernicus that was not designed to offer governmental services. It was different mindset, different purposes, more scientific or climate change focused. But actually now we are reflecting about how can we deliver a service that would be much more secure, including for governmental purposes. This is the so-called Earth observation governmental services. That's something that we are putting in place. But can you tell me, how you see that service and how would you see that? Like, should the European Commission think in terms of developing and owning new constellation? Should it be about buying services from established and trusted companies? Should it be a combination of the two? So I think it would be quite interesting to hear from you how you see this construct in the long term.
Sure, thank you. It's a shame there's only 4 minutes because there's so many directions in which this could go. But I think, first of all, just a little context again on ISAI. Thanks to the fact that we have the 38 satellites, we managed to have this very, very high revisit rate, meaning that we are able to deliver imagery from mostly every place in the world within 1 to 2 hours. Our delivery times are actually very fast as well. So I, honestly, just like said in the previous panel, I think Mathilde from Kairos, she mentioned that it's either speed and revisit rate, or let's say the quality. I think in this case our quality is approaching most satellites of any size, but the resolution and the revisit rate are also high. And so if we were to be as a company, I'm guessing some sort of input into such a program, that would obviously allow very fast delivery. We call it reliable monitoring. And also the, I guess, key aspect is that it's 24/7 because of the clouds. No clouds, no darkness being an issue. So, of course, we would be a great candidate for that as a company. I think a good, I guess, analogy that I just, it came to mind while you were mentioning this is really the NATO APSS program. I think the Allied Persistent Surveillance from Space. They, as I understand, Poland actually just entered this program. And they share satellite data between each other. And actually, referring to what Colonel Mattia said earlier, the standardization of protocols and interfaces. I mean, in this case, we as a company just participated now in the initial planning conference of the NATO Coalition Warrior Interoperability Exercise, CWIX. And the whole goal of this conference is exactly in order to standardize and the interfaces comply with sort of STANAG, standard agreements, and all kinds of norms. And the same thing could obviously be translated. I mean, I almost think that NATO is really leading the way here. And as a company, obviously, we are naturally drawn to that because of what I said earlier in my previous comment. So yes, I think we would be a fantastic candidate, and as well if Poland. I don't want to speak for the country. That is Colonel Mattia's job today, but I'm sure that we would be very, very happy to supply such data. As to its organization, I cannot speak, but it's certainly needed at a time like now for countries to be able to exchange information, whether through NATO or EU. And in a very secure manner, which is also what ISAI, of course, does. Our how do you say it? Our security protocols and methods of delivering the data, fulfill every single military's standards, as we have proven so far. So, I mean, the encryption is at the highest possible level, and everything that we use is organized in a way that is, I don't want to say unbreakable, but as good as we can do. So
we will hire a few hackers just to see.
We have constant attempts actually at hacking, but thankfully so far we've survived all. So
we are approaching the end of that panel. But what I like to, just zooming out a bit, we have. And I'm going to talk to you three first. And in 1 minute, I just want to hear from you the following. We will have a new US administration that will shake a bit the planet. We have Elon Musk, who is going to take a high position, slashing the administration, slashing certain federal agencies. So from your viewpoints, what would be the risk? In one sentence, what would be the opportunity? The three of you. So we can start with you, Casper.
I think the opportunity for us as both Europe and referring to the Draghi report again, we need to increase competitiveness. The methods of how we do it, whether we change your return, whether we don't, let's leave that. Every country has their own preferences at this point. As Poland, of course, we would care for the geo return to remain as it is, so that we can obviously build up our competencies along with other countries. But as a continent, of course, we need to build our economic and military independence. And so ISA, as a company, I think fulfills that role very well. Again, not to brag, but we are the leader in the domain in which we operate globally. And it's really also, again, referring to what David said in the previous panel, we managed to acquire capital from the US, and we retained a global outlook for where our clients are. And even our competitors, not to quote some, but such as Capella Space, they really remained very domestic in their approach, whilst thanks to the fact that we were open to the entire world, whilst, of course, leveraging all of European talent is kind of the secret sauce behind ISA's success. So certainly it's going to be an uncertain couple of years, but I think more of companies like ours can help Europe retain its competitiveness.
So you see more opportunities than risk. Excellent. That's good. That's a good mindset. Bertrand?
Yeah, I think I will refer to the reports made this year by Mr. Draghi and Mr. Ministro. I think there is a big opportunity to create one single space EU market. I think it's something we need because I heard from the previous panel that we cannot do everything that's true, but we have to make sure that first of all we're able to find what we don't build at least in 2 locations, not to depend on one single location, and especially not from the US. And we have to make sure that the regulation we have in Europe are as stringent as the one there is in the US, because it's not a fair market where a US player can play in Europe and we cannot play in the US. So I think we have to be very careful about this. This is an opportunity, but the risk I foresee is that the gap we have with the big players, US and China, but US especially, will increase, and therefore we will increase as well the dependency we will have on the US, which is not at all a good thing for the EU.
Thank you so much. This call for a single market, Chiara made it as well, so we will work full speed on this one. Chiara?
Yes, so there's nothing like a startup that understands what it means to have to be a team in times of hardship. And I believe we are going through hardship. We will go through more hardship. And so obviously there's high risks, but the opportunity here is really finding a European strength in this hardship.
That's very positive. Last word to you, Greg, because actually you're going to be the next presidency of the Council of Europe. What's going to be one of the key driver of your presidency during the first semester 2025? One of the key driver. You have 10 seconds.
It's a really tough question, and to be honest, I don't know the proper answer. Of course, space, yes.
Very good, space. Yeah. Thank you so much. Really a pleasure to have you with us. Big applause to the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that panel. The fact that Thales were able to hack a satellite control from a distance will stay with me for a while, but still very, very impressive indeed. Just going to have a very short break between our panels, but certainly one of the takeaways from that was what we heard from ICI, and that kind of defense came to us slightly by accident from the sounds of it. The next panel is all about perhaps looking for that next opportunity, the next opportunity for entrepreneurs to kind of have this cooperation, this collaboration as well. So that certainly something to look forward to. A little bit of housekeeping from me. Something else to look forward to. Our Hungarian host this evening throwing a little cocktail reception for us in a beautiful early or late 19th century mansion in a park in Budapest. So certainly something I'm looking forward to. I hope you are as well. I'm looking up to see if our next moderators are ready to come down. Lots to look forward to tomorrow. I won't do any spoilers. There'll be a bit more about that later as well. But certainly that panel, a particularly interesting one. We're going to look at entrepreneurship, look at Cassini, other initiatives in the next one. In case you're wondering about where to go afterwards, back downstairs to the lobby where we all met for coffee. There will be shuttle buses provided after this session. So that's where we're at now. Quick mic change up there that I can see. And yeah, looking at the next panel will be hosted by Dinkova from the Dinkova from the European Commission, and we will hear from the EU Agency for the Space Programme as well. And I know they were doing that. That's very nice. So yes, just wait a couple of minutes for our moderators to come down. In fact, we can ask our panelists to start moving down to the front as well, and we'll be ready for that next session just in a couple of minutes. Thanks.
Hello. Hello. Thank you all for staying. And welcome to this last session for today. We are going to discuss space entrepreneurship, what it takes to unleash the potential of European space entrepreneurs. I'm very happy to co-moderate this session together with Fiammetta Diani, who is the head of Market, Downstream and Innovation at the European Union Space Programme Agency. And we have a fantastic panel whom I would like to invite to take the stage, and maybe in the order of seating. We have Mr. Stavrin Nikolov, who is the founder and CEO of a Bulgarian company called LL Cloud, a multi-sensor cloud platform. Hello, Stavri, very nice to have you with us. Then we have Mr. Lorin Pava, who is the project coordinator at Design Terminal, an international innovation agency based also here in Hungary. He's also an ESA technology broker, and the organization is also running the ESA Business Incubation Center here in Hungary. Hello, and welcome to you as well. Finally, last not least, we have Francesc Casas from PLD Space, a Spanish company that designs, develops, manufactures, and operates space launchers. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Space entrepreneurship. Please have a seat. Space entrepreneurship, innovation, really two topics that are very high on the policy agendas of public institutions across Europe. And there are very good reasons for that. First, because, and we heard it in all the previous panels, space is important for our societies, it's very important for our economies. Investing in space has a multiplier effect on returns on investment across the economy. And second, because space is a very dynamic and growing business. It's a business in full transformation. Whether we believe in consulting companies and the numbers they throw around, but some people predict that the space market will exceed $1 trillion US dollars in value by 2030. Clearly, there's a lot of opportunities in space, and we would like to see Europe and European companies getting a big share of these opportunities, of this market. Space has been in full transformation over the last 10 years or so. The way we knew space 40, 50 years ago is no longer there. We have these fantastic dynamic entrepreneurs coming to the market, more and more commercial players. This is disrupting the established views, the business model in the sector. And this is great for the competitiveness of the industry. We have more and more private entrepreneurs coming on stage, yet many of them struggle to find the opportunity, struggle to find the financing in Europe, while some of them go and look for big investment rounds from other parts of the world. So in this session, we're going to talk about that exactly. What it takes to be a space entrepreneur in Europe. What do companies need to grow and become commercially successful global markets? And how can public institutions help? What are the expectations? But with that first introduction, I would like to pass the floor to Fiammetta as the co-moderator of this session for your first remarks.
Thanks, Dinka, and good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, it's my pleasure to be here in Budapest and in this university. So it's where we created the new generation of entrepreneurs, and we hope of space entrepreneurs as well. When I was entering the room, I noticed on the left side Maxwell equation on the wall, and so it reminded me when I was also at this type of university and learning, and at the time trying to create a spin-off, a startup actually, doing different things in space, and at the time it was kind of heretic. You cannot do this. But now we have a completely new world in which young talents can create startups and can play in this space field. And so we are really witnessing interesting times. And what are we doing at the institution, and in particular at Commission and at USPA, to foster these new times? So let me start, before going to Cassini, that was mentioned many times, let me start with a very important pillar, the market intelligence. So space business is not only the upstream part, but there is also the utilization of space that lower the barriers to entry for many companies and permit to enlarge this club of space quite a lot in the recent years. And so to understand this market, we have studied it in details, 15 market segments that cover new ones, such as, for example, the insurance. In the quoted the user consultation platform, we had a big insurance company sitting with us and explaining what are the needs for the utilization of space. But also banks, also climate services. So please rely on this market intelligence. It is used by many entrepreneurs to build their business plan. It's very realistic, and we have our Earth observation and navigation market report available. The second thing I would like to quote is Cassini. So Cassini is our initiative for space entrepreneurship, 3 years running now, and I think we really changed a bit the equation of space entrepreneurship in Europe. We have 600 startups that venture with us in this initiative, and we have 14 new funds that invest in space. But last year, in June, in Prague at Entrepreneurship Days, we had 40 investors. So 14 is supported by Cassini, but the other, they were really coming up as new players in space. And Cassini can support the startups 360 degrees from the early stage, we will have the opportunity to go through it today, to the more mature startups that are ready to meet investors. So we support from hackathons, with the challenges, with the business incubation, and with the matchmaking with investors and with other corporations. But as it was said before, we are also anchor customer with our new initiative that like the contributing missions that were of Copernicus that were quoted, but also all our big procurement as competitive subcontracting that is suitable for startups and SME. So that's the thing that we are building in Europe today, and we will go through it with our panelists to better see how in practice they are contributing to changing their way of doing business in space. So Dinka, back to you.
So now, thank you, Fiammetta, so elaborately setting the scene for this panel. I would like to start with the first question for Francesc and Stavry, you. For the companies that have started a successful business, starting with you, Francesc, can you tell us a little bit about your company and your journey as a space entrepreneur? What have been the main challenges along the way, and perhaps what do you think are some of the main factors for success?
First of all, I'm not one of the founders of the company, but unfortunately, Raúl Verdú hasn't been able to come. And Build Space is a launcher company. It was founded in 2011. It is actually the first private company in the launching segment in Europe. And during all these years, the challenge that has been more difficult for us has been the path of credibility, and especially to attract investors, because since the space sector, especially the launching segment, is super capital intensive, and especially before starting operations, funding has been the most important challenge, and it's still one of the main challenges we are facing today. Even that, it's true that, for example, attracting talent, it's also a very important challenge, and it's very difficult, but it's even more difficult to fundraise the money to do the investments need to grow, rather than develop the launcher. So I would say both credibility and fundraising.
Okay, so I think this message has been resonating a lot this afternoon, the need for funding, and we can come back to this afterwards. Stavry, your company's in the other extreme of, let's say, the space sector. You were more on the downstream, working very closely on the edge between space and digital. But the same question to you. What was your journey as an entrepreneur? Where were the main challenges, and what were the success factors for you?
First, thank you for having me here. I started as an academic many years ago, and one of my main areas of research has been always multi-sensor data fusion. So that's my background, and that's where our company started. I guess that many in this audience have seen a wonderful old movie documentary called Powers of 10, seeing the Earth at different scales and what information is available. And this was one of the earliest inspirations of LL Cloud, the multi-sensor cloud platform that a small group of us have built over the last 3 years, with the aim of allowing different customers and partners to combine easily satellite, aerial, and IoT and wearable sensor data all in one cloud, and do analytics and fusion in a different kind of way. So one of the big challenges for us, being technologists, most of us as a team, has always been how to package this service, because you see many different clients and partners trying to use it in a different way, and also having slightly different needs. So the capabilities are there. We have a working stack that allows these functionalities. But how do you offer it as a service to a client? How to package it as a product? So this has been one of the main challenges, and getting business advice on this has been, through the Cassini program, has been quite instrumental for us.
If I may bounce back a little bit on this, your last sentence. Both of your companies have been through some of the Cassini tools, Business Accelerator. You have been to many of our matchmaking events. Can you tell us what difference this has made for your company, and how this has perhaps helped you in your journey?
Okay, so I'll start. Basically, I have been personally a mentor of startups for nearly 15 years in Copernicus and Galileo and Cassini startups, and with Allow Cloud, I found myself at the other end, and I was initially quite curious what benefits such an accelerator will bring. And what we received in terms of mentorship and support has been really quite great and surpassed in many ways what we expected, especially in terms of both refining our business strategy and how to package our product and how to more narrowly define our target markets, but also in terms of getting connections to potential clients and partners in the US, in the Middle East. And since we built also 2 business solutions, one for integrated port analytics, and the other one is for monitoring abandoned orphaned oil wells, which were built with our platform for business clients, not for developers. We had also some issues how to actually best, with a small team, sell 2 different types of products. One a platform, the other 2 business solutions, and how they can support each other in terms of a sales process. And we got 2 great mentors through the Cassini Business Accelerator who helped us through several iterations improve this process.
Thank you. It's great to hear that. And Francesc, what help has this provided in your case?
Yeah, well, it's not very different at the end. But basically, especially the mentorship program, because we could also learn from different experts on things that could be improved, that sometimes we keep focusing on what we are doing and maybe we can forget focus. So it was really good, actually. And then the other thing is the matchmaking. As Fiamena said, the opportunity to find new investors or potential clients, but especially the fact that bring maybe venture capital from other industries and start bringing them to the space industry, which is the risk aversion sometimes is quite different from other industries. It has been very important for us. And not only if we at the end have found a potential or an investor in this Match Cassini events, but because other type of investors have listened about Cassini and are more interested in the space industry.
Thank you. So, Fiametta?
Yes, so before going to the next question, let me say something practical. So we have opened today one of our action of Cassini. It's called the Cassini Challenge. You can enter with an idea, a prototype, or a product. So it serves exactly what we said before. If you already have a product and you need to mature it, that's also an opportunity, not only early stage. It's open now, and you find everything on cassini.eu. But let me go to the next question. I would like to better understand the early stage support that we can give to the startups. So how do we scout ideas and how do we make them in a real success into business? And I'm very curious to know maybe in the beginning what is the role of the technology broker that from Lawrence.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this panel. So as you heard before, I'm working as a technology broker. My main job as a broker is to find the connection between space and any other sector here down on Earth. So as you may know, there's a lot of inventions which were originally invited and developed for space use, and these slowly came down to Earth. Everybody knows how many dollars were invested into the Apollo program, and I think the return was 4 times here down on Earth. And this is the program of the broker, which aims to do a similar or tackle a similar issue. So what I'm doing with my colleagues all across Europe, this is the European Space Agency's program, is to help map up the local space ecosystem in our countries and connect the relevant space inventions to any other sectors. So from one perspective, I'm looking for space companies here down in space companies who would like to expand into other markets. And from another perspective, I'm also looking for companies from any other sector who would like to innovate, develop develop a new product, and they do not necessarily have to be in space. That's the beauty of it. They don't have to actually connect to space. They need to have a challenge they would like to tackle, and here comes the broker who connects them with a possible space company who can help them solve the issue, help them create a new product, and that's what a technology broker does. Basically, and this is an international program. So if I don't find a Hungarian space company for a certain challenge, then I can ask my colleagues from all across Europe to take a deep dive into their own ecosystem and provide some new partners for the given challenge.
So it's bi-directional, I understand. So you scout the space ecosystem and find if there is something that can spill over to other sectors,
Yes.
but the opposite also.
It's both push and pull, so yes.
Okay, interesting. And also we are among the various opportunities of Cassini. For early stage, we have the hackathons. And so the next hackathons is actually happening very soon, this weekend, in 10 locations in Europe. And I know also in Hungary, and you are kind of involved as local organizer. What do you think of the hackathons? Is a way to attract new talent? Do you think it's good at the early stage?
Absolutely. So we have the pleasure to organize the Cassini Hackathon for the third time in Hungary. We are organizing a local round, and as you heard, it's going to start this Friday. But if you're interested, if you have a good idea, we are still open and still looking for applicants till the very last moment. So the Cassini Hackathon starts at 5 p.m. this Friday, and the application closes at 4 p.m. So you still have time if you'd like to join us. Look up Cassini Hackathons on the internet.
Space and defense, so to link to the previous panel, the topic is space and defense. So
exactly. The joining point of space and defense and how it can be leveraged here on Earth in drone applications, on satellite applications, and other defense and security maneuvers and applications as well. These are the three challenges. Hackathons are an excellent way to attract challenge because it doesn't need any connection to space. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be, don't have to have a company. You just have to have a good idea which you would like to, manifest and work on it. And during the hackathon, you have the opportunity to do so during a marathon, a weekend, where we help you with mentors. You have data. You have all the necessary information available, and an inspiring environment as well, and teammates where you can work on challenge, work your ideas, and this is basically the first step to attract talent, the first step to make good companies. And of course, this is followed by the other initiatives and accelerators and funds which can help you further along the way. But the first step is always the hackathon, which can spark the idea, which will lead to a company.
Okay, thanks a lot. So we hope that many of the students out there, on top of studying the Maxwell equations and the secret of electromagnetism, they will also come to the hackathon and be our future entrepreneurs. So Dinka, back to you.
So we talked about these early stage ideas and how, but to grow from an idea to a successful business, you need a lot of things. You mentioned some of those, the mentorship, the business accelerators, but you need also money. And this question came up. How do you see the need for funding in Europe? Is there enough private capital? Is the public support enough to help companies grow successfully from the early stages into a commercial success and hopefully a global commercial success? Do you see a lack of funding in Europe, Stavri?
Well, first I will start that with mentioning that different space technology and space data companies have, of course, very, very different needs. Those that are in the upstream business typically will require much more capital and orders of magnitude. The availability of, say, Copernicus data and other developments like in AI and cloud infrastructure and compute infrastructure in the last 5 or 10 years has made it fairly easy for software companies such as ours to build an initial prototype, a working prototype of and then turn it into the nucleus of a business. I think that there is capital, whether it's channeled where it's needed most, I'm not sure. I think you'll have to talk to VCs about this. There are certainly funds that are focused on space technology, and they invest almost entirely in this domain. And there are others, and it seems that there is an increasing number of more generalistic VCs that consider or launch into investing into space technology companies. But not all of them really understand very well yet the technologies and the market, more importantly, because that's what they are interested in, and the growth opportunities.
Okay, thanks. And Francesc, from your perspective, your company is obviously in the more investment-intensive part. How have you been able to raise the money you needed to get to where you are today? And do you see that there are opportunities for you to grow with funds here in Europe?
Yeah, we have raised more than 150 million. It can sound a lot, but if you compare between us and companies based in the United States, for example, they have achieved to raise billions of dollars. So the ecosystem is different because especially the risk aversion is different. And we have been able to raise all that money because we have been delivering what we have promised, step by step, with different milestones. So finally we succeed on launching Miura-1, which is the first space launcher from the private sector launched in Europe. And this has boosted our credibility, and we are receiving more attractiveness from the market, but it is still very different to very difficult to convince investors, and together with clients, of course. And now we are still under the development of Miura-5, and we are still looking for funding, and it's still very difficult. But it's true that once you start delivering, it gets easier, but it's still very complicated.
Well, it's exactly something which we try to achieve also through Cassini with the investment facility. What we're trying to mobilize venture capital funds that are, some of them generalist venture capital funds, to invest or to take the risk to invest in space companies, and we already have 14 of those. But Lorinc, from your perspective, do you see that there is, well, there's obviously a huge gap between the amount of venture capital funding here and from across the Atlantic, but how do you see the situation? Are companies that you work with struggling to find the funding they need?
Yeah, there's a need for funds, most surely. So, for instance, we have a nice sum during the Business Incubation Centers program. Companies can receive 60,000 euros. The same one goes for those companies who participate in the Technology Broker program. They also receive 60,000 euros to implement space technologies into their product line or create new product. But what I see, this is only an amount for a small sum of their expenses. This is only enough for the beginning. So for the first initial steps to take down the road. And what I see that there's a substantial fund missing for these companies to continue their journey and continue the development of a certain product they started within the programs. So I most certainly agree with the gentleman that these sums seems to be a lot if you say it out loud, but in reality, this is only enough to start your journey.
Yeah, indeed, I think in Europe we are doing well in this initial phase, in the seed funding.
Yes.
Yeah, but we're maybe still missing the big tickets. We see the capital-intensive example here. And also another reflection we were having this morning in the SME assembly, so we were having another exchange with SME that are not necessarily from space business, is also that in some cases the venture capitalists, they are okay for the one that want to scale up, but there are certain startups that then evolve as SME. So maybe they are not attractive for venture capitalists. And for this, we started also to talk about with commercial banks to try to, let's say, build capacity building also there, to be able to follow the journey of entrepreneurs also when they are not big scale up, and so they're not attractive for venture capitalists. So these are the two things that we need to do still, I think, in Europe.
And how can big public programs, we talked about this a little bit, help you also to gain the credibility and to gain the trust of these venture capital funds? I know, Francesc, that PLD is part of the flight ticket initiative, where you were selected among a few others in a pool of companies from which the European Commission and ESA are going to procure launch services in the future. Has this first client approach helped you in raising more funding?
Yes, especially to reach this credibility we were talking about before. The flight ticket initiative, even the ESA programs such as Boost, for example, or the fact that we, for example, reached an agreement with, well, we signed our first contract, national contract with the Spanish government. These stamps definitely contribute to increase our credibility and attract more investors, because it makes the project much more solid than without the support of the European Commission in this case and the Spanish government.
Okay, so the public sector is your anchor customer. And do you think that the current programs that we have, the funding tools we have, are suited for small companies? We often hear that they're very cumbersome, that they're very long. We heard that in the US they have maybe better procurement practices through procuring more services, much faster, much agile. Stavri, how do you see Europe doing here, and what can we take? As Guillaume said, we are reflecting now on the future space program. What can we do to further help entrepreneurs grow?
Well, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this question. We've always tried to actually target commercial clients and also universities, because our platform is like a playground where some researchers and other organizations can really test some very novel ideas. So we have not participated much into procurement and so on. But I would think that one aspect that may help companies like ours and others a lot when dealing with big clients and also with organizations where certain certification is needed, is to help with such processes. So not like direct grants, but something that will help with specific certifications, or also going through the bureaucracy and administration that is linked to it. This will be very helpful, especially for small companies, because small companies don't have such capacity. Yeah.
So helping the companies navigate the maze of administrative requirements. Yeah. Lawrence, how do you see this for the companies that you work with? What are they struggling? How can public programs assist them?
What I see what would help for these companies, of course, for in many programs, Cassini, Business Incubation Center, so on, is that usually companies partake in these programs and they successfully finish them, but after it they've been kind of let go, let's say. So there's no definitive alumni program for these companies. So the connectivity is missing to follow up with these companies. How are they faring? What are their certain needs? And this includes what we heard, that they need further information about upcoming programs, upcoming tender possibilities. Of course, I know that there are web pages, and EU SPA and ESA is also doing dissemination information, but not directly connecting the alumni. So they're not connecting, and also I think this could be done on an intentional level, keep them in the loop, keep them together, and find investment and partnership possibilities all across Europe. That's what I miss the most at the moment.
Okay, so let's finish it with Francesc, your take at this.
No, well, I think that the fact that the European Commission, for example, starts becoming a real anchor customer for Cronins, in the case of PLD Space, transport service contracts, for example, so it can allow us to fund the development of new projects and especially scale up the company, and because we will face a difficult phase, and is the ramp up when we start producing and launching in series. That's the real problematic or the real challenge we are facing together. So the fact that the European Commission becomes a real anchor customer and follows the initiative of the flight ticket initiative, I think would be really good to boost the sector, the space sector, and increase opportunities together with the providers and all the value chain we are already working for together.
Excellent.
Yeah, maybe if I can take from this, because it's important to be anchor customer, but it's also important that as an institution, and we are trying to do it at USPA, for example, for Copernicus and Earth observation, we help to, let's say, create new customers. So it's difficult for startups, SME, to access big customers outside space, like, I don't know, in the tourism sector. We are working, for example, with big insurance companies such as AXA Climate or with IKEA for the deforestation-free value chain regulation, compliance, or with Booking.com for tourism. So to access this kind of players that are completely outside space, it's not always easy for startups and SMEs. So what we're trying to do is to onboard them in piloting together these services and to enter really in their operational workflow. It was said before by the previous panel by Kairos and by others. This is really the challenge. So not only be anchor customer, but creating new customer. This is a bit what we are trying to do as well for the utilization of space in particular. But let me go maybe to another question for our panelists. So I hear often from entrepreneurs in particular that one of the problems that you have is to find the talents. So that it's not so easy, that it's where we need to invest as well. So can you tell us something more? How does it work? You growth a lot, for example, Francesc. How is it? And what can we do more to help you along this way?
Yes, we have grown from 110 employees that we were last year, and now we are over 250 more or less. But it's still very difficult to attract the right talent and bring it together. And I believe that sometimes people believe that to work in a launcher company, you need to be an aerospace engineer, for example. But at the end, in our company, we have industrial engineers, civil engineers, telecommunications, and people who have studied math or physics or any other type of careers. And sometimes it could be good to attract this kind of talent to the space sector, because at the end, there are a lot of opportunities. And it's not that big, but we are actually competing for the same talent, and it's actually very complicated.
Okay, so more than creating new space programs in the university, to convince people that study other subjects to, let's say, come in space and join the startups. That's
yes, for example.
Okay. Interesting. And what do you think about it? You work a lot also with talents, I understand, Lorenz, no? I saw the initiative you're doing.
I need to introduce another of our programs, which is also an ESA initiative called SRO, and it specifically targets children, and it uses space and the excitement of space exploration to steer young kids from the age of 3 till university, so 18, 19, towards STEM subjects. And I think this is the first step which we need to implement in every country, and it is a program in every European country, thankfully. It just recently started in Hungary, and it helps a lot to explore how STEM subjects could be fun, and destroy the myth that science is only for geniuses, and this is something that I cannot learn. Science is for everybody. Everyone can enjoy it, and this is what this program is all about. We are doing a lot of, we have 3 partners, universities and associations from Hungary, and we're doing teacher trainings. We are giving them examples and classworks how to do experiments with kids related to space to make chemistry, physics more fun. We are doing competitions and challenges for kids where they can participate in an amazing journey. They can build like satellites, they can write codes which will be run on the ISS, they can investigate climate anomalies locally, they can train like astronauts, a lot of programs for kids which will make these things more fun. And also we are doing a lot of outreach throughout our companies, incubated companies to show these kids that what can they achieve with STEM subjects, that they can do very, very cool stuff and be engineers in space and achieve their dreams when they grow up. So I think this is the first time which needs to be done better, because, as you said, it's an international trend that fewer and fewer engineers and kids turn to STEM subjects, and this really affects the space industry a lot.
Okay, so building the passion in the early stage. Actually, my son and his friends, they were building candy rockets and launching them. So yeah, at school. So I think
they need to seek out CanSat. It's very fun. They are building literally they're building a satellite, which at the end, during the competition, it's launched into 1 kilometer high, and then it descends and collects data. So it's really they are building a functioning satellite, and they don't have to be an engineer to be a part of a team. It's really cool. So I can highly recommend.
Really good. So we're preparing the talents for your companies. Any vision on this?
Well, what the previous two speakers mentioned is like educating young people, both at university and school as well, is certainly the way to go to give a longer-term effect. But many companies need people today, if not for yesterday, and they need to fill in specific gaps. And there, I think maybe some kind of less formal strategy where people like hardware and software engineers, physicists, mathematicians, designers, I mean, they could be somehow enthused to dive a little bit more into using space data, space technology, understand some interesting case studies and use cases of today, and perhaps some of them can consider switching jobs and joining more of our companies.
Thank you.
If I may just pick on something that you said. We see, and we've done a few studies over the last years, that we see that the talents that particularly the space entrepreneurs and the startups need are not only the engineers. They need a very diverse set of skills, a diverse pool of skills. And this is one thing that we really need to reflect as public institutions at European level, at national and regional level, how you prepare that pool of talent. Obviously, there's a lot of competition from other sectors, but there will be a dedicated panel on skills tomorrow, so let's not say everything that has to be said on this subject. I would only like to say that listening to industry and what industry needs, for example, we have set up a platform, a kind of a matchmaking platform between industry and students, young graduates, those looking for their first jobs, so that industry advertise the open positions, and then students or young people can apply to those positions. So trying to make this matchmaking through our career launchpad, Space Career Launchpad. So if you're interested, you can Google it and go online. We also offer some voucher opportunities for interns who are looking for internships, particularly in new space companies, so that as an institution we provide some incentives for the students to join these new companies. So I think this more or less brings us to the end of the session and the end of the day. If I may just ask you in 1 or 2 sentences to conclude, what will be your 1 or 2 recommendations? What should be done to unleash further the potential of space entrepreneurship in Europe? We start with you, Lawrence.
Okay. First thing I would say, more emphasis like programs like Azero, so higher reach out for the younger kids and steer them towards STEM subjects and engineering path, and more programs like Cassini and hackathons to recruit talent and find like-minded people, because I think it's an excellent place to find new recruits.
Thank you. And Francesc?
Well, I would say more contracts from the European Commission acting as anchor customer, but as well as boosting Cassini programs or other initiatives that allow attract talent, but allow attract foreign investment, together with increasing or making bigger the new space ecosystem or the space industry.
And Stavri?
Perhaps bring more Earth down to space, from space to Earth, so that more people realize that a lot of these interesting things that they dream of doing or consider doing can be done, and they're being done today.
I think it's excellent, and it's probably one of the missions of the European Union Space Program Agency, bringing space to Earth. This is one of your logos, but that aside, I think indeed, if we want to grow our sector, we have to grow the business opportunities for them, and it means growing the space economy. So, Fiammetta.
Yes, so indeed, that's a bit our bread and butter, and we are there for this reason. But let me wrap up this session, because I think we are going toward the end. So I think that I would like to thank for this entrepreneurship journey you have run through with us. So it was really interesting to hear from you how it works. So what I noted is that the most important challenges are the credibility, the fundraising, but also the product, how to package it and to make. And we heard also of the possibility as institution that we have to support these different phases. We learned that we are pretty good in the early stages, and we learned about the technology broker role, the hackathons, and that we are maturing and doing better in the later stage, but still some good challenges for us, for example, for the bigger tickets. And also we understand that we can support being anchor customer, but also with certification or compliance. And finally, we talk about the talents that we will hear tomorrow. So from the creating our new entrepreneurs of tomorrow from school and in university, but also providing already today the right professions that are needed to grow your startup. So I think it was very interesting, and I would like to thank you for the content that you provided. Back to you, Dinka.
Yeah, also a big thank you from me too, and I think that our panel deserves a round of applause. From my side, I think it was great to hear that, and we are very proud of it, that Cassini is making a difference in your daily adventures as entrepreneurs. But obviously, we don't stop here. We need to do more, and as we are preparing the next phases of the programs, some of the messages that you passed today will certainly be taken into account. We need to do more to create the environment, the enthusiasm for more companies like yours to be created and grow here in Europe, and to dream big, probably, and also to become global successes, to conquer the world, if I can steal a punchline from one of the previous speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. I think this brings us to the end of the last session, and then over to you, Alex, for the concluding remarks of the day.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That is it for day one, of course, of this conference. I hope you're looking forward to day two. Very brief from me, because I know that there are cocktails that have been promised. I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is a pivotal time, and I think all the conversations we heard when it comes to European leadership in space confirm that, at least from my somewhat outsider's perspective compared to everyone else in the room. I'd like to extend my thanks, our thanks, to all of our speakers, our moderators, and the participants, you all, of course, and those watching on the live stream as well, to the tech team at the back for their wonderful organization, and of course, the European Commission and the Hungarian Presidency, as well as the university, for bringing us all together and bringing me along for the ride as well. We have a lot to look forward to tomorrow. I won't give too much away, but we are going to build on today's momentum. And of course, no space event is complete without looking at pictures of Earth from space. On your way out up here, you will see the Copernicus Earth Art exhibition, which shows the benefit of Copernicus for member states, particularly including Hungary. You will see beautiful photos of Hungary and elsewhere on the way out. Certainly something to enjoy before the cocktail evening. A little piece of logistics. You heard me mention that you will be brought to the venue. The buses will be just outside where you came in. The first one is in about 20 minutes. So you've got 20 minutes, slowly making our way out, enjoying the lovely photos from Copernicus, and then I will see you all at the cocktail. Thank you very much.